Thank you. Okay, it is 6 o'clock, Goffstown Budget Committee, Tuesday, December 10th. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Jared?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wonderful. Samantha, would you like to kick us off?
I would love to. Samantha Kearns.
Olivia Welch-Erdahl.
Peter Grigorapakis.
Kelly Boyer, Select Board Rep.
Jared Talbot, School Board Rep.
Joe Alexander.
Frank Hobbs.
Doug Pounds.
Israel Carey.
Brian Mazer.
Laura Stevens. Allison DeCesare.
Richard Manzo.
And I have Derek Horn here, some department heads. Danielle Besor will be late, but she'll be here for staff support. And Mark Reno will be late, and Elizabeth DeBrew will be late. So I'll try to note when they walk in. And Elizabeth DeBrew just walked in, so we're all set. Okay, so the first thing, I said that you were going to be late, and I would note when you arrived. So.
Oh, tomorrow, or next time.
Oh, okay.
Today I'm just late.
She owns that.
She's here at 6:01.
Okay.
All right, so is there anyone here for public comment? Not seeing anybody, I'm going to close public comment. Next thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We have, I believe we had 5 packets handed out at the last meeting. So I'm going to entertain 11-7, 11-12, 11-14, 11-19, 11-21. I'll push 12-3 back. I don't think we received 12-3 yet, or maybe it's online or something like that. But so with that, is there a motion on 11-7 minutes?
Yeah, I move to approve the minutes on 11/7,
Motion to
2024, without amendments or as presented.
Okay. Motion by Brian, second by Frank. Is there discussion? Laura?
I have a, I'm referred to on page 4, about halfway down, I'm referred to as Lauren Stevens.
That's not your name.
That is not my name. Oh, and where is my name?
So
That's pretty good
with that
for all these
amendment,
packets.
just on page 4, Laura Stevens is referred to as Lauren Stevens. With that change, that motion, will you
I
have your
amend my
motion?
motion. Yep.
All right. So motion as amended to approve. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Abstentions? Doug Pounds abstains. Jared Talbot abstains. Allison, you weren't here either. but-
I was watching it.
Oh,
Does that
okay.
matter?
No, that's fine.
Okay, yeah, I watched it at home because I was sick.
Oh, okay. All right, November 12th.
So I move, Chair, to approve the minutes on 11/12/24 as presented.
Motion by Brian, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Laura. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Brian's motion? Opposed? Abstentions? Jared Talbot abstains. Motion carries. November 14th, 2024.
I'll continue. I move to approve the minutes on 11/14/24 as presented.
Motion by Brian, is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Second by Laura. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Brian's motion? Those opposed? Abstentions? Jared Talbot abstains. Motion carries. November 19th, 2024.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve 11/19/24 minutes as presented.
Motion by Brian, second by
I'll
Laura.
second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Jared Talbot abstains. Motion carries. November 21st.
To round it out, I move to approve 11/21/24 minutes as presented.
Motion by Brian.
I will second.
Second by Laura. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Brian's motion? Any opposed? Abstentions? Peter Grigorapakis abstains. Motion carries. Okay, so let's get back to business. Is there anything for old business, discussions from last meeting? Anything to bring up before we get started with Town Hall? Okay. So with that, I know we pushed Derek off, but would you like me to wait till Danielle gets here, or you?
No, you
you're
can
comfortable? Okay. All right, so Town Hall is page 1 of our budget documents, so we can get started with that. Laura?
I have a clarifying question. So it includes lines on page 1 and 2. The breakdown of elected officials, I just want to make sure I have it correct as to who falls under what. So line 41250, elected officials, under administration,
That's the clerk.
that is clerk, okay?
No?
No.
That is a stipend for the select
Select
board,
board,
the
okay.
five-member select board.
Well,
On page 2,
I thought she was saying
I'm sorry,
the town clerk.
so under town clerk, the elected officials, that is the elected
Under
town
town.
clerk.
Under town hall?
No, under,
Okay, I have town hall as the first one, line 41250, elected officials,
on page 1.
yes.
So that is the stipend for the elected select board.
Okay.
On page 2, the elected officials under 41400, town clerk division, that is the town clerk position.
And then there's one more under election.
So that is a breakup of our 3 elected supervisors of the checklist, as well as a stipend on election day for the moderator and assistant moderators at the polling locations.
Thank you.
Peter?
I'm just going to get us started. As the person sitting next to our select board rep, I'd like to motion to bring that line down to 0 for this year. So that's the 27,239. I'm going based off of.
One second, I'm just gonna, is there a second to Peter's motion?
Second.
Lots of seconds. Second by Laura. Go ahead, Peter.
I mean, I'm basing it off of where we started with the school, of course. And I think we should start from the same basis point. So I think the prudent thing to do here would to remove that down to 0. I'm not philosophically against it. I know that other people are. Personally, I'm not in that mind. But more so, I just want to make sure we're starting from the same starting point with both the school and the town.
Okay, so a motion by Peter, second by Laura. Is there more discussion on this? Frank?
Peter, that's line 41250, correct?
Yes, and correct me if I'm wrong, that contains everything in regards to select board stipend, right?
On page 1 only, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the org code of 13 followed by 6 zeros.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm sorry, when you said on page 1 only, does that mean that there's something else related to the select board?
Well, I just wanted to clarify, because Laura had asked about items on page 2.
Yep.
So page 1, under administration, are the 5 elected select board members only.
Okay.
I'm still opposed to this, but
I'm opposed to both of them, actually, but I don't see how we can keep one and not keep the other. So, I mean, I'm going to vote for it, but I'm not happy about it. I won't keep going on about it, but.
Okay.
I just want to echo that exact sentiment.
Okay, any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Peter's motion to cut under Town Hall Administration, line 41250, elected officials from 27,239 to 0, please raise your hand now. Those opposed? Olivia Welcher et al. Opposed? Any abstentions? Kelly Boyer, Jared Talbot abstain, motion carries. We have a full committee, so it's 12 to 1 to 2. All right. We'll keep going.
I have a question on page
Go ahead,
1.
Elizabeth.
So Derek, there's like 2 sets of electricity, propane, water. Is that Town Hall and Grassmere Town Hall?
Yes, if you can see the first 8 digits, the last, I think, 6 lines have an 87 in the,
Yeah.
that's for 87 Center Street, that's Grassmere Town Hall.
Okay, okay. And then I also had a question, there's a lot of like books and publications, printing and binding, and I kept writing in my notes, is this the town report? Is this the town report? And then I finally found the town report at the very end. But what are all these other things? I mean, it's a fair amount of money.
So books and publications, printing and binding. Books and publications is when we need to update our law books. They have supplements, because yes, we can look them up online, but it doesn't have all of the different case law to reference, or there's actually notes in there that talk about the legislative changes and when they occurred, so it's a little bit easier to do it if you really have to get in depth. So that's what our printing, or our books and publications is. We reduced it, I think in prior years it was even higher than that, but that is what we use it for.
So it's in each of these sub-departments as well?
And so the one in admin is for that. And then the assessor has books about different appraisal information. The town clerk has to get, for books and publications, the town clerk is for a lot of their blue books when they have to look up values of not just vehicles, but a lot of it is like recreational vehicles and other items like that. I know they're printing and binding in town clerks. I believe that one is for their dog tags, but as we get to that particular office, I've got the detail, I can look at that.
Okay.
Derek, can you give me a breakdown what's in line 44100, professional dues?
So we provided the committee with a full breakdown of all professional dues on November 21st, but we do have, the largest item is NHMA dues for $16,470, Municipal Management Association dues, ASCAP, that's our music license. Anytime we hold any type of event, we have to have that for use of music at public events. ICMA membership for both the town administrator and the assistant town administrator, and that's it.
Doug?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. I noticed on page 1 and 2, there's also another category, 41,250 for elected officials. What's the one on the second page? What is that one in reference to with 86,000 and something?
That was, Derek said that was the town clerk.
Oh, town clerk.
Well, I just want to make sure,
There's another one that is halfway down, that is the supervisor of the checklist and the town moderator.
moderator and
stipend.
assistant moderators that work the polls, because again, we have 2 polls, so we have assistant moderators at Bartlett as
Yeah.
well.
Okay, oh, so was I not paying attention?
You weren't paying attention.
Sorry about that. So those are all the people that work the polls then?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you, sorry.
Jared?
Derek, just with the recent change for elected officials going down to 0, do we need to change any other lines via vote for any kind of FICA or Medicare or any kind of taxes that come out of those paychecks?
We can do that, if you don't mind waiting till Danielle gets here. 'Cause
Okay.
anytime I try and calculate, I get yelled at, it's because I do it wrong.
I
so.
guess, do we need a motion, or basically because of the original motion, we'll just have deductions in
I'll
those
leave that
lines?
up to the committee. If the committee directs us to take out associated, if whoever made the motion in the second, associated FICA and Medicare along with that, then we could do that.
Yeah, I don't think we need the exact dollar amount, but we can just say associated.
We can make
FICA and
that change.
Medicare.
Yep.
Okay.
Do you
we
need a motion, though?
I think we should do a motion, just to,
Okay. Should I just amend my motion, or?
we had already passed, so just make another one. It's easy.
Okay. I move to remove all related items, is that what we're saying?
If you just ask us to reduce FICA and Medicare based on your previous vote to zero out that line, we'll make that adjustment and we can give you the exact dollar figure. As soon as Danielle gets here, I'm sure she can calculate that for you.
Perfect. I move for that.
So moved. Any, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Doug, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed, abstentions? Jared Talbot abstains, motion carries 14-0-1. Okay, anything else, page 1, Brian?
Yeah, I have a comment and then a motion. Thank you, Chair. So Derek, I want to say thank you for providing the detailed report to all of us. I appreciate that. My motion, and it shouldn't be a surprise, going back to 44100, professional dues, I move to reduce that line item from 18,895 to 2,425. So we're backing out the NHMA of 16,470. And that's due to my principal motion, well, probably most of it's about the principle behind it. I think taxpayers' money should not go towards lobbyists or advocacy groups when it comes to any kind of public interest. So that's I have to do it out of principle. I know they add value, but again, I think that doesn't eclipse or surpass the principle behind it, so.
Okay, motion by Brian to reduce that line by 16,470. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Frank. Discussion on this. Samantha?
Thank you. So I have gone to all the budget committee members, and I want to say department heads and maybe other town officials are welcome. Like NHMA hosts a budget workshop at the beginning of the year in September. We were all invited to go to it. I know I've gone the last 2 years. I found it incredibly informative. The amount of information that they gather and present to us. They give us a lot of information. You also get to hear from other towns as well, because there's other town officials that go. And you kind of get to hear what questions they might ask about situations that are happening in their towns to see how it relates to our town. If we aren't a part of that association, then we would not be able to attend that conference. We would not get that information. That information is also accessible to, even if you didn't go to the conference, I'm fairly certain you can still get that information. Because they publish, because we're part of the association, so you can get it. I'm sure that NHMA, I know other department heads have been able to give like huge rallying cries around what their associations are able to do, and I'm not able to do that as eloquently as some of our other department heads have done, but I know that I have found value in this group and attending that conference, and I'm sure that our town hall department heads have used them a whole lot more and have a lot more value than than the small amount of value that I've had. So, thanks.
Allison?
I've actually kind of been giving this quite a bit of thought, and this is by no means my wheelhouse. I don't know that much about lobbying, but if we're going to sit here and start cutting dues to organizations that professionals belong to, that one, Brian, you've never been able to give us a single example of a lobbyist that went after something that would actually be hurting the people of Goffstown. And I understand your point, but, and again, I'm just going to go out on a limb and guess that, say, all of the utility companies that we give, I don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars every year through this town, have major lobbyists, and those lobbyists are definitely not working in the best interest of Goffstown people. Yet we're not saying, oh, let's not pay for our electric bill. There doesn't, we're making it seem like just because they have lobbyists, you don't even know how much they actually lobby out of these organizations. They do so many other things. There isn't a single one that's just a straight lobbyist. And the benefits that come from them, and you have no examples of how it's hurt Goffstown people by having that. So I think it's kind of an odd conversation that we just keep having. I get your point, and you can continue to do it, but that's just where I was thinking about it. I said, how far is that going to go? We are actually giving money to companies that are lobbying against regular people.
Olivia?
My concern about this entire line of questioning every single organization that may or may not lobby is that really we're impacting department heads, the public, and our ability to access information. And I think we've continually talked, especially this year, about trying to reduce the amount of confusion between what the departments do, what the committees do, what the board members do, and make it accessible. And I don't think that any of us will be able to do that with less information to be able to share with people in Goffstown.
So I'm just going to say my experience as a legislator in New Hampshire Municipal Association is they lobby on behalf of cities and towns. I've had experience working with them, but also I've been on emails with Derek's been on them. Like if Derek ever feels like he needs to reach out to his state reps on behalf of the town, the select board usually makes a motion to recommend something, send a letter to the state reps. and then we act accordingly. I just think like this $16,000 is not necessarily needed when the select board can come in and motion to, let us know about a certain bill. What NHMA does is flag certain bills for them to take a look at, but a lot of times they're not like, I would say that there's nothing stopping the advocacy from happening from your town administrator or select board with this money being taken out. Like, they can continue to be doing that, and emailing the state reps.
Could I?
Yeah, go ahead. And I'll let Kelly go after.
Yeah, no, I would, so would you have a solution on how new budget members would be able to become more familiarized with the process of serving on a committee like this if we were no longer allowed to go to the training session at the Dairy Field? Are there other opportunities for that if we don't pay those dues?
I think there's other opportunities for members to become aware of how to be a budget committee member. I believe we put one on, like Scott puts on a mini training, and Derek and Danielle can
Yeah, they
also do
do the
that.
things here, but there's also the further training with the other towns.
I'm gonna let Brian go, Allison, then Doug.
Can I?
Oh, I'm sorry, Kelly, my bad.
So the not being part of NHMA will not inhibit the community from reaching out to state reps by any means. That's not actually the part that I'm concerned with. The part that I'm concerned with is the amount of other services that we get from NHMA, which Derek can add to, but that includes an abundance of information. It helps us grab statistical data from other communities, provides legal guidance on things that have happened in other communities for a basis for us to jump off. Policies from other communities. There's so much stuff that they offer us that would be an incredible amount of staff time to do otherwise, to reach out to these different communities individually. And while the legislative roundup is helpful, it's certainly not the primary way that we utilize them. Additionally, the incredible amounts of training that they provide that are free have really come in handy over the years, and I'm sure Derek can add as the person who deals with them on a regular basis, but this is certainly something that is a great value added to our community and specifically to our staff members.
Okay. I'm gonna continue on, and then I'll let Derek add in. Brian, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I think I have a question for Derek. So say, for instance, if we weren't part of the NHMA and there was an elected official, could they still pay to get access to training? Do we know the answer?
So sometimes NHMA does offer a member price and
Okay.
a non-member price. I don't know for all of their trainings if they offer that, because some of their trainings are a little bit more popular than others, so
Right.
they may limit it. But many times they do offer two different price points for membership versus non-member.
Okay, all right. So,
Go ahead, sorry.
yeah, if I continue. So, where do I start? So, again, I want to be clear. I'm not trying to refute that these organizations don't add value to the community. It keeps on going back to me is that, and to Al's point, I need to do more research and find out exactly how they lobby, what kind of bills they're advocating on, and to come back to this committee with more substantial information. So when I have time, I'll try to do that. It's a pretty big effort, but I will try to do that. But the thing is, for my cursory investigation is that these organizations are not neutral. They are not neutral, regardless if it's on the right or left. They're not neutral. So to me, the hardship on the community is not so much the community, it's more the citizens. So there might be some people that have a public interest on one thing, and how these organizations advocating or lobbying is against their public interest. So now you're saying we're using their monies against their public interest. So to me, it's like, again, it goes back to the principle behind it. This is taxpayers' money that should be strictly used for public services, not for lobbying and not for advocacy activities.
Okay. Allison, did you have something?
Yeah, I want to follow up to what you had said, because you said that not being part of the organization would not stop them from reaching out to the select board and then reaching, but doesn't that also then mean that Danielle and Derek or whoever they put in charge of that would have to be following God knows how many bills to figure out what they'd even want to reach out to the select board to talk to state reps about? So they're now given another task to watch state legislation. I don't even know how many bills go through the state. You could probably answer that better. But that's another thing that they'll now have to do instead of having this organization who generally is looking out. Am I incorrect or correct in this? Like, do they does that organization help you and Danielle know what's going on in the
Yes.
State House? So
Yes.
you don't have to try to figure out everything that's going on in the State House?
Correct.
I'm guessing if you had to, it would be an enormous task. Would that be
If
safe to
it-
say?
Yes.
If
yes.
it was now your and Danielle's responsibility
Yes,
to
I
know
think,
what
I think
bills
my
to-
memo, I pointed out that there were, in the last biennial session, 911 House bills, 374 Senate bills. Right now, there are 844 LSRs that are going to be going for both House and Senate. So yes, having somebody reviewing those, prioritizing which, and to Brian's point, I'm sorry, I probably didn't do a very good job in my memo to you, but I explained the process by which they actually advocate. They come out, they have subcommittees that develop their policy positions. I brought those to the select board, we discussed those, they were on multiple agendas, they were discussed at public meetings, and the board authorized me to go and vote as the member representative in September. And then all the members' representatives get together, we vote on the policy positions, and then that is the guiding principles for NHMA. So I probably just, I tried to summarize it in 2 paragraphs in my memo, so I probably didn't do a great job of it, but this isn't just us sending money up to them. They're really, their 3 primary things is they want to preserve local control, limit state mandates, and to increase state aid and revenue sharing to cities and towns. Those are their 3 primary focuses on advocacy, but their policies and principles, which are available on their website, go into even more detail, and those have been voted on by all of the member cities and towns, and we do that every 2 years.
Okay. Anything else? Laura?
I feel like we're voting on a theory of a potential, which doesn't make any sense. We know what actually is being gained from this membership. Many of us have experienced it firsthand. And like Samantha said, there's so much more that we haven't that we know our department heads have. And if there were even if there were one glaring example that we all knew about because it was very either taboo or something scandalous to know, we would know. There's nothing. Like Brian said, it would probably take a lot of research to find out exactly, what was happening with lobbying. That probably means they're lobbying for the exact things Derek mentioned, which he can list them again. Those only benefit the towns, the things we talk about all the time.
All right, any more discussion on this? Okay, so seeing none, the motion was online on the page 1, on line 44100, professional dues, to reduce it from 18,895 to 2,425. That's a reduction of 16,470. So if you're in favor of Brian's motion to reduce the line by 16,470, please raise your hand now. All those opposed? Jared Talbot, Kelly Boyer, Peter Grigorkakis, Elizabeth DeBrule, Mark Raynaud, Olivia Welcherdell, Samantha Kearns, Richard Manzo, Allison DeCesare, Laura Stevens, Doug Pounds. So motion, any abstentions? So motion fails 4 to 11 to 0. All right, so we'll continue on. We're on page 1, so keep going. Peter?
Derek, can you just remind me, I was actually trying to find your section in the presentations from the town presentations, but I couldn't find it. What was the big shift in terms of regular wages that we're looking at going into 2025?
Yeah, so in the 2024 budget, that was, we had 2.5 positions in that. Danielle was the assistant town administrator and / finance director. Earlier this year, the board made the move to make her the HR director, assistant town administrator. So instead of 2.5 positions in the full-time wages, you have 3 full positions. And you'll see on the finance side, you'll see a reduction of half a position there. So it's really a shift of 50% of her salary.
So, okay, so reduction is on the finance.
It's on the finance, yes.
Thank you.
I think in our packet there, it's on page 17 in the presentation. I had to
Like
hunt.
rifling through papers at
I've
one
like
time.
unorganized them all, so I had to find it.
There we go.
Derek, can you tell me, because the supervisor of the checklist, those are elected officials as well, right?
Yes.
Can you tell me what exactly their stipend is? And that's for the full year?
Yes, it's a monthly stipend. If you give me just a second, I will find that information. So it's $1,000 a year. So that's how we have it built into the budget. So it would be 1,000 divided by 12 is what we've got currently budgeted. So a little bit over $80
A month.
a month is what we have
Okay.
budgeted, yes.
So I'd like to move to
What object?
reduce line 41, 250 elected officials from 9,300 to 6,300 for the purposes of reducing the supervisor checklist salary.
I need to correct myself, I'm
Okay.
sorry. It's actually 3,000, so it's $250 a month. Thank you.
So it's 3,000 a year.
It's 3,000,
Okay.
$250 a month.
That makes
Because
a
there's
little
three,
more.
right?
Because there's three of
Three of
them.
them,
That's
yeah.
why I was like that
Yep,
mountain.
yep.
Okay, so 9,000 is what I'm reducing the line by.
Yes, there's $9,000 in that line budgeted for the 3 supervisors.
Okay, so I would like to reduce line on page 2, 41, 250, line 140100000, under elections, from 9,300 to $300. It's a $9,000 reduction.
What, question, what's the 300 for?
I think that
That is for our moderator.
the moderators for election day.
For
their
election day.
stipend.
Why are you keeping those?
I could do that.
I just didn't know if there's a reason.
No, okay. I'll cut the line from 9,300 to 0. Is there a second to the motion? Second by Brian. Discussion, go ahead, Smith.
So, I think, I could be wrong, but I would think that you would want to keep the moderators in there because all election officials get paid on election day. You, like, that, and that's what they get paid. Like, everybody makes something, I mean, I guess it would be less.
The
than
volunteers get paid, I think.
Yeah,
But the
which I
select
guess-
board is there, the select board also has to work that, and now we just cut them. So,
I mean, I guess they would just be paid the same rate as everyone else.
So they do not get an hourly rate, the moderators do not.
Right, so I guess, but we have to pay them because you have to, like everyone
No,
else gets paid.
they're elected officials, they fall under a different, they're under the labor laws, they're an elected official, so they're not subject
Okay.
to the same pay that we would give a poll worker or
Okay.
somebody that's working or a counter at the end of the night.
Okay. My second question, and this is gonna seem a little bit ignorant, but maybe this is like more for the viewers at home. What exactly does the supervisor of the checklist do?
So they maintain the voter rolls. They meet probably during a regular season when it's not very busy. They're meeting every other week to take in new applications for people that have registered to vote. They are getting information for anybody that has moved outside of district to take them off the voter rolls. They're taking anyone who has passed away. During a very busy year, they're in there multiple times a week, updating with new registrations, and they have mandatory meetings where they need to be open for the public to view those voter rolls or to be added. And then on the day of election, they are manning the registration tables. They are in charge of anybody registering to vote, coming in, that they have proper documentation. At the end of the night, they count up all of the people that registered and all the people that went through the checklist. So you have poll workers that are working a checklist that's actually overseen at the end of the night by the supervisor of the checklist, so that we can make sure the ballots that were handed out match what Kathy has for her vote totals at the end of the night. And then their work starts afterwards, because anybody that registered on the day of the election, they then have to register them in the New Hampshire electronic system. So after the presidential election, they had over 1,000 voters' information that they had to register as new voters in the state's database. So this was a very, very busy year for them.
Thank you.
Discussion on this? Peter?
When was the last time their stipend was reviewed?
I believe the select board did that 2 or 3 years ago. There was an increase. I think before it was around $150, but that was also before we had to do the 10-year purge. Every 10 years in New Hampshire, the voter rolls have to be reviewed for people that haven't voted in a long period, and they have it's a very long process. So they did that, I think, in 2022. They did that review, so they had a very busy year that year, and just before going into that, the select board increased their stipend.
They were also heading into a 4-election year.
Yes.
As well.
I just think if we're gonna be consistent on stipends and salaries, this is also an elected official position, and the select board meets probably far more often than the supervisor of the checklist, and we just cut their stipend, so it just makes sense.
Agreed, as long as we don't go after town clerk, because that's.
No, I would
different.
never, no, Kathy is full-time in the office, absolutely not, so.
Is there, sorry, but my question is there anyone, like, now that we're on this, is there anything else we should be thinking of, any other lines where that's gonna come up?
I believe there's a sewer commissioner stipend. We'll look at that when we go to the sewer budget. Any other elected official stipends?
The only other one is town clerk, and again,
Right.
she works unlike other towns where a town clerk comes in for a couple hours a week, she's there.
It's a full-time job.
Yeah.
40 hours, and then when you're in election, she's doing 50 to 60 hours a week.
Yep. Allison?
So why is that an elected official instead of just a job like you guys have?
That's a requirement of state law. The
really?
town clerk has to be elected.
Okay.
There is a choice with tax collectors, and at some point, the town moved to an appointed tax collector, but town clerk is one of those jobs that it has to be elected.
Do most towns have one that is there full-time like we do?
I haven't done the research, so I can't say, to be honest.
I know from my anecdotal experience, there's a lot of, where town clerk is there, not as often as all. Like, the smaller towns, probably a few hours a week, they're open for the sort of services that Kathy provides.
And they may only do voter registration and vital records, and then you have a revenue collection office to do the DMV items.
Okay.
But
We're just
we're lucky
curious.
that Kathy does all of that.
Yep, okay.
Okay, any more discussion on this motion? All right, all those in favor of the motion to reduce line 14010000 from 9,300 to 0, please raise your hand now.
Aren't you reading the board number, not the line number?
The line number, well,
It's the same.
41250 is the function.
Yeah.
No, I was reading the actual number.
I thought you were reading this.
The whole number is 1401000412550. That's the whole number.
Before we vote, Mr. Chair, because you made the motion, would you amend the motion to also include the corresponding FICA, Medicare, and tax lines?
Yes.
Associated with those?
Yes, okay, so, the $9,300, I already set the line, and all corresponding FICA and Medicare, that comes with these positions.
You need a second on that, I'm assuming.
Whoever,
Yeah.
Second by Peter. All right, any more discussion? Are we ready to vote on this? Everybody knows what they're voting on? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand now. Those opposed? Abstentions? It's, opposed, so it's 13 to 1 to 1. Motion carries. Kelly Boyer is opposed. Jared Talbot abstains.
Mr. Chair, procedurally, I'm not sure, so I seconded your original motion, you just amended your motion, but then Peter seconded it, so is there procedurally have to change that? I seconded the original motion.
That you amended.
You
I
it.
amended the motion, I just asked for another
Oh,
second.
all right.
So Peter was the one that, I just
Okay.
was looking for the nearest person. and that's-
Do you want it, Brian? You can have it.
No, I was just curious.
Okay, so that motion carries. We're going to continue on page 2. Brian?
Thank you, Chair. I want to bring something up, and I kind of alluded to you guys the last meeting, and thanks again for Derek and team providing the budget detail report. But going back to page 1, under 41150, which it pertains to the facility maintenance and custodians. And I'm gonna lump this in together as well on page 4, 41100, which has to do with IT help desk and IT support. And so this is what I want to have a conversation is that, is there an opportunity where we can look at efficiencies to potentially consolidate IT and custodial work with the school?
Oh, I thought you meant, sorry. I thought you meant combine
Oh, no.
IT and
Not their
custodial work. I'm
disciplines.
like,
Because
there
the
might be
school has the
some
same,
problems there.
the school has these departments as well, or these functions, and I'm thinking, is there an avenue where we can consolidate? I'm not saying the IT infrastructure, I'm just talking about the personnel. Is there an opportunity where we can consolidate and be more efficient with taxpayer monies when it comes to IT and with custodial work?
I feel like legally, isn't there an issue with that? Because you have a school budget and a town budget, and the voters vote on either or?
You would
I
have to
believe there
have
is.
memorandum of understanding between two political subdivisions in
Yes.
place. There is a provision in the law where it's usually town to town, where you might have two towns that want to share a position. But you have to have a memorandum of understanding in place, and it needs to be filed and reviewed by the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
Kelly?
I can speak for the town hall IT department that they need more bodies, and we're actually trying to fund some monitoring that we can pay because we don't have enough people to physically monitor. With the addition of the radio project and some of the other systems, they don't even currently have enough staff, so I'm not sure how they could possibly do more with the school, especially because we're on two different structural systems. Licenses, it's all separate, so I don't know how, unless I'm missing anything, I don't foresee how that could work.
Doug?
Mr. Chair, yeah. All right. Are there any, does anyone know, are there any administrative staff that could be shared between the two, possibly?
So
management?
you mean administrative, like Brian, who's the IT director? So he also does, he's not strictly doing administrative, and, if Joe wants to invite him up to speak on behalf of his own department, I would welcome that, but Brian doesn't just do administrative work, he does a lot of systems work as well, mainly because they are so understaffed.
Brian, just for the education of the committee, can you come talk to us about your position and what goes on in the town?
What goes on in the town? So I think you guys kind of alluded to, Brian Ray, Information Systems Director for the town of Goffstown. IT covers a lot of things. It's end user support, it's the radio system, it's the network for the whole town, software maintenance, software upgrade, security, cybersecurity, firewalls,
Device
pretty much
management.
anything that has to do with IT that you guys can think of, we're doing it, and probably more.
So does that include the communications center at the police department? Do you also?
We manage the
that?
hardware in there, we support their software in there. Yeah.
Okay.
Are there other questions for Brian, Samantha?
I know you may not be able to answer this question specifically, but how do you think your job differs from the school's IT department?
Sure.
Without really knowing what they do.
Well, I'll say Steve and I talk all the time. There are definitely things that are similar in what we do for our jobs, but it's a completely different support mindset. He's got thousands of users, most of which are students. They are open during the day. They can do maintenance at night. Summer, they have extra time there, so that's kind of a different mindset, whereas we support 24/7 emergency services. So there is not really a window of opportunity for us to do support. like resetting of servers and all that kind of stuff. So I think the other thing that was alluded to was licensing. Licensing for education is a lot different than licensing for municipality. There are significant discounted programs for the schools, so there's two different managements of licenses there as well.
All right, other questions? Thank you, Brian.
And then thank you.
Okay, so we're continuing on, we're on page, we were on page 2.
Can I ask a non-IT related question, because that was something that you had just said, Derek? So you were saying that if they wanted to share, that you'd have to get permission from the state to have the town, or whatever?
It's my understanding that you have to have a memorandum of understanding that has to meet certain guidelines.
Okay.
And it has to be reviewed and on file with the Attorney General's office.
So is there anything along those lines with the fact that Parks and Rec and DPW are often doing things for the school?
We
Whereas-
have, that's
but it's
just always,
covered under
that's
their-
always been the way it's worked.
But do you see my point, which I'm saying if the school had to pay for those things separately, their budget would have to be a lot higher, correct?
Yes.
But because DPW and Parks and Rec step in and help the schools, but still all that cost is falling under the town's budget,
And
not
I-
the schools, correct? Am I
Yes,
getting
yes.
that whole big picture?
Those costs for Parks and Rec for the field maintenance that they do is under our budget, under the town budget. But I think Rick and the town have always viewed this as, it's a community, and ultimately it's hitting the same taxpayers.
Right.
And not being very well-versed in the intermunicipal agreement law, I don't know if they treat political subdivisions within the same town differently than they would us partnering with New Boston or Ware.
Yeah.
So I would have to do more research on that.
Okay, I was just curious. Okay, thank you.
Elizabeth?
So what about the facilities piece of this? I kind of, looking back through my notes, I don't see any discussion of how many facilities people does the town side employ? What buildings do they clean everything? Do they?
So Town Hall has a 25-hour-a-week part-time facility maintenance gentleman. I'm the only one with somebody on staff that does facility maintenance, so many days he's at the library doing minor repairs. He's doing it at the police department, doing minor repairs or coordinating with vendors. So we really have one 25-hour-a-week position that's available for departments to utilize that. And then in terms of cleaning, at Town Hall, we have a custodian that comes in during the evenings. Other departments contract that service out. So it's under their contracted lines.
So when was that last evaluated? About contracting out versus having a staff?
It hasn't been done in a few years.
I mean, that could potentially, I mean, who knows, you'd have to look at it, but contracting things out usually end up, in my experience, costing more money if you have a full-time position's worth of work. Maybe that's worth looking at some point, again.
I want to say it was like 4 years ago that we looked at that, but some of the problem I know with facilities is like the timing of which people can come in and do stuff. When we had consolidated cleaners, they kind of had to clean buildings at the same times, and that was a problem.
Okay.
So I mean, sure, the board and department heads could talk about it again, but I know it was difficult to get one person to kind of do all of the things, especially, I know at the time we had meetings at the fire department, but then the evening meetings kind of caused a barrier at town hall, so some of that overlap was too difficult for just one person to do, because it
Right.
was kind of all at one time, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay. It does. I just know that, like, I mean, to Allison's point earlier, when she was talking about some of the things that Parks and Rec and DPW does for the schools, a lot of towns, their schools contract out for that, and it's actually more expensive than using the services within our own town.
Yeah, I definitely didn't think it was a bad thing. I just was trying to figure out kind of
Right.
how that relationship worked. And again, sometimes if people are looking at the town budget and saying, well, you know, why do we put so much into Parks and Rec? You have to remind them that it's taking care of your schools too. We're not paying someone to come in and do those fields or another employee to do those fields.
Right.
It's in the Parks and Rec budget, it's not in your school budget.
So those people who are cleaning the contracted services are gonna be under the contracted services lines for each department.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we're on page 2, I'm moving on. Oh, Frank? Yep.
Derek, I was going to ask if you could speak to specifically the condition of the floor in the clerk's office. And I know you and I have chatted about this briefly, I think it was months ago. Could you just speak to that briefly?
Yeah, so many years ago in both the tax collector's office and the town clerk's office, we have commercial carpet that was put down in the late 80s in there. All of the rubber underlayment has basically broken down, and at any seams has become a tripping hazard. So in the tax collector's office, what we did is we simply exposed the tile that was left under it and cleaned it as best we could. And then we've done that in some sections of the town clerk's office, but they need new floors in pretty much every office at town hall. We have done the downstairs when we had to replace the sewer line that ran down the main hallway in that building. We replaced that sewer line probably about 7 or 8 years ago. I don't recall exactly when. But yeah, we definitely need to replace the floors in those offices.
And have you received estimates for that flooring in its entirety or in specific offices?
We had started that process, but we don't have up-to-date quotes. It's been a couple of years since we've received up-to-date quotes.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to say I've witnessed it obviously firsthand. I register vehicles like most people here and,
Hopefully everyone.
yeah, unless you're walking everywhere. You know, I noticed the duct tape on the rugs, you know, the broken tiles on the floor, definitely a tripping hazard. Also the air quality. I mean, when you have you said the rug was installed somewhere in the 80s. I mean, we got our money's worth. So, so I would love to see an estimate done. Also, the folks that work in there, I'm sure everybody knows, they work really hard. I mean, Catherine and everybody there is, I mean, they're in that office all day. So this is an area that I would, and I guess I'm putting this out to gauge the appetite for it. I think that's an area that we should invest because it's going to be very hard if we had to replace one of them. And I think it would at least be somewhat of a moral boost and a better place to work. So any other comments, I'd welcome them.
Derek, how soon could you get like a rough quote to replace the flooring, at least in the tax collector and town clerk office?
In those two offices alone, we could probably have one for you for your meetings in January.
Okay. I think it's something, I think Frank brought up a good point, something to look at, because I did speak to the ladies in that office too in there. I think it's a good investment for us if we're going to make one. Danielle?
I would point out that it's not just those two offices. So all of our offices have the same issue. The Joint Law Safety Committee has actually brought a recommendation forward to Derek and I and the Select Board for addressing that sooner than later because of the tripping hazards. In some of the other offices, I don't know if you recall from the walkthrough, we have carpets that are bunched up from people using chairs that, you know, office chairs that roll in and out of their desk area to get up and sit down at their desk, and that's created tripping hazards as well. So it's something where, you know, Derek and I definitely want to address it in building wide. I'm not sure if one at a time is the best way to go. We've also discussed with the Select Board recently some grant opportunities for changing offices around to get a revenue collection or get some cross-training. So those could be coming forward in CIP in future years as well.
Okay, so do you believe it's too early to do something on this, or Kelly, go ahead.
I don't think it's too early because it needs to be done, but truly, if we're gonna do it, we might as well replace all of the carpeting at once. Like Derek said, when the pipe burst in the basement, we did that tiling that's down there now. But, I mean, we have stairs that, like, pop off the cap coverings, although we haven't had one in a couple months, but all of the flooring in Town Hall needs to be replaced. So I'm sure the people in those offices appreciate your sentiment, but it would make the most sense and probably be more cost-effective to do it all at once.
Okay. Samantha?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'd be interested, I mean, the town clerk and the tax collector side is probably like what the public sees the most of, whereas, like, I'm imagining the second floor of town hall, so to the left is probably where the public is more, and to the right is really more, like, the public doesn't really go into those offices as much. So I would be interested to see like what everything is, and then probably more on what just the left side is too. I mean, if you're gonna get a quote, you can probably get the same one at the same time.
Thank you. All set, Brian?
All set? So Derek, you're going to work on getting quotes, hopefully before the next
We'll see
meeting?
what we can do.
Okay.
We'll make an effort.
Hold up a little.
I mean, the hard thing is, I think I can't speak for the select board, but I think the most important thing is we would like to see the budget committee put forward a budget that will pass.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we still got a long way to go before we start adding things in my opinion. I think we need to hold up on sending them to get work that we might never need. Or not this year, at least.
Okay. All right, so we're still on page 2. Did I move on page 3? Peter?
Derek, really quickly, the finance regular wages, so that's 4110 in that 15 line, whatever. How am I saying this now? So I'm saying, under finance, our first line.
41,100?
Yeah. Regular wages, so that's the one that's reduced half a position?
Yeah, before it was 4.5 positions, and now it is 4 positions.
Okay.
Has that number changed? I'm sorry, Colleen, for a moment, Peter. But have we reduced it from 312,000 then, or is it still 312,000?
No, we shifted the 50% of Danielle's position over to admin.
Okay, so what, just because I don't have the numbers, and I do apologize, so what should the number be?
So what you're seeing in the budget report is correct. It's just why you see a big jump between default and select board on page 1 versus seeing a decrease on page 2.
I think Jared's question is, shouldn't that number have dropped more
Yeah.
than $6,000? And I think the answer to that is, it's offset by the increase in wages for the other people still in that department.
Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. That includes, the select board includes the new compensation plan that was implemented.
I think this is a good time. I really think that we need to talk about this because we're gonna try to take 9,000 out of elected
You were getting
officials.
to
and
the point.
21,000 out of, select board, but like, the real driver in the cost is the 60% target that the select board made. And the select board did this when we went to a default. The select board voted to give these raises, merited or merited, but merited or not, to these people during a default budget. And now we're seeing the increase in these wages, and they've already seen the wage increase, and the voters haven't necessarily weighed in on this. And I think this is the main driver of the cost in the town budget. So I just want to open it up. I think we should talk about this more because I don't think we're ever going to see anything less than, rough math, like an 8% increase if we don't at least talk about the driver and the non-union wages.
So,
Go ahead.
I mean, I was like putting this all together and it took me a little bit and I realized at the last meeting, I thought we were talking about something proposed to do, and I didn't realize until the next morning in this epiphany, oh my God, we'd already done it.
They had already received the wage
Yeah.
increase.
So this for me has been the main thing I've been wrestling with, like since the last meeting. And I'm a little conflicted by it, but I agree with you. I do think it's the driver. On one hand, I want to commend the select board because retention and keeping our employees is a huge problem. And they did exactly what we had said at the beginning of our deliberations that we wanted the select board to do. They prioritized. They saw a big problem and they prioritized it. I am a little squeamish about the fact that it got done during a default budget, but I can probably let that go. I don't think this was well communicated or explained to the voters. I don't think the voters understood what they were voting for last year, and that this was the main driver of it. And I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I think that's on the select board, but I also think it's on this committee. Because part of our job is to explain to people so that they can then make their own informed decision about what they want to vote for. So I went back, I looked at your minutes from last year. Yeah, you guys talked about it, but in the public hearing, it kind of got looped in with a long line. Well, there were increases in salaries and increases in and all these other things. I don't think it was adequately explained to people. Now we're in a tough spot because it's already been implemented. So we can't change it now because then we're not going to give these town employees a big pay raise for 6 months and then take it away and give them a pay cut. But to me, everything this year has got to focus around supporting that increase. And it's going to hurt to go in. You're right, it's going to bump our taxes up. There's no question about it. I think it's worth it, but it means sacrificing other things for this year while we put this into place. So I was going to wait until we get to the end of the line-by-line discussion because I think we do need to keep going on the line-by-line discussion, but ultimately, we're looking at this budget that's, last year the budget was 1.1 over, the difference between default and proposed was 1.1 million, roughly. Voters voted it down by 61%. That's a super majority. I think their feelings were clear. This year, we have a difference between our default and a proposed budget of 2.9 million, more than double what went last year. My concern is I don't want to see the town with another default budget. I think that's bad for everybody. How do we get to where we need to go? And I think instead of looking at what we should be taking away, we should flip the script and be starting with the default and thinking about what we can add and how high we want to go between that proposed budget and that default budget and still have the best chance to get that budget passed. So it's going to be major cuts from what is proposed right now. But I don't see any other option, in all honesty.
Jared?
So I'd like to ask a question, then make a comment after. So for the lines we're talking about, specifically the full-time regular wages on page 1 and the one listed for finance, we have a difference of roughly $106,000. My question specifically is where did that $106,000 come from in a line transfer for those raises that were approved by the select board?
So there were line transfers that were made on March 18th. If you want the detail of those, we can provide those to you.
And that goes into my comment. Thank you, Derek. I hate to say this because at my committee, I fight back venomously on this, but this is a bottom line budget. Regardless of what this budget committee does, it's a total number that goes before the voters, the legislative body that's voted on. This board is an oversight board for the items that go through, and we do go through line by line, and I believe we should be doing that. But in the end of the day, the people that administer the budgets are responsible for the bottom line budget and administering the money as it is. What does that mean? They can make changes. So if we've cut a line too steeply, but they still find that it is needed, they will transfer money from a line item to another line item to fund it. Now, I know that the school board, probably like the select board, listens to this board. If we're saying that we should be cutting something, we aren't going to say, oh no, they don't know what they're talking about. We're going to try to listen to them. But at the end of the day, we were in a default budget. The select board thought this was the best thing. They moved money from one area to the other because it was a priority of items. I agree, we should definitely not be cutting salaries for somebody that was approved. Absolutely agree with that statement. This is what the default is, that's fine, just as long as we have the traceability to what line was removed, and that line in the default and the proposed is still that $106,000 less, I understand, and I can at least understand where it came from. But this budget committee, though we are looking at line by line, we have to remember this is a totality of circumstances. And I love what Elizabeth said. We look at it individually to kind of question it, but at the end of the day, we're putting together one number to put on the ballot. And that's what we need to focus on. Because when I did my math, we have roughly for the budget for this year into next year, we have a delta of $3,666,000, which is a 13.5% increase from this budget year to the proposed budget of next year. The default budget and the proposed budget that next year that are on the warrant articles as currently stated when we were given this is roughly 12.5%. If we rejected, or the legislative body rejected, a 1.1% increase or whatever it was, and we're at 12.5%, I can't say that we did our job as a budget committee, period. Because that's beyond what was already discarded last legislative session.
I mean, I actually think we were handed like a losing hand here, because we're gonna go through and look line by line, but at the end of the day, how much are we gonna be able to cut this low? Like, the select board handed us a budget that we can't do our jobs on, because I don't think this is gonna pass the way it is right now with all these increases. That's just my opinion, so.
Well, that's why we need to start having conversations with the select board and work something out.
Well,
I
they
mean,
handed
that's-
us a budget with a 13% increase.
Well, they have cut a lot of things, first of all, that were originally, I mean, I'm not arguing with you, but they've cut a lot of things, and they're still trying to keep us moving forward on other goals while achieving this main objective. And I agree with the main objective. I think it was the right decision. And I think in the end, it is a great example of long-term thinking that's gonna save us money. Because the lack of retention is killing us. And the thing that makes, I mean, why would you work for Goffstown if you're making 8% below market? When you could go anywhere else and get better pay. And the thing that makes the town is the people who work here. So I agree with that. I do think there are ways where we can start doing this. You're not gonna like it, but it's gonna have to be cutting into capital expenses. At least for this year, we have to get over this hump. And then once we get there, you guys are gonna have to stay on top of it, because once we get everybody, all these employees to 60%, we gotta keep them there. We can't afford to fall asleep at the switch and end up 5 years from now back at 45% or whatever it was. So, I mean, my one question, I mean, I have a bunch of questions, and one of the things I would like to do is start taking that 2.9 million. I'm not sure why our numbers don't match up, so at some point we should talk about it. But that 2.9 million, and start figuring out what are the big blocks of expenses within that 2.9 million, and see what could be pushed off for another year. That's what I'm saying. It's gonna hurt. There's no way around it, because good things that we need are gonna get pushed off for another year. But I think it's that, or you're looking at a default budget that's $250,000 over the current budget, which is completely unworkable for the town, in my opinion.
Peter, then Laura.
Only because you brought me up. I'm not mad.
Okay.
The reason I'm not mad is because you're making the argument, you're essentially saying this is an investment, right?
Yes, I think
Right,
it is.
and if we're saying, I didn't hear it last year, and maybe I just wasn't paying attention enough. I didn't hear that voiced, like, this is what our focus is right now. We need to invest in this for our future, right? Our retention and the value of our employees and our talent is what we're focused on right now. But what I hear you saying is that you're basically saying we need to offset it, potentially. Potentially, we're talking about huge offsets. I'm going to throw out there, kind of to Jared's point, I'd prefer not to move forward in this, but just kind of have it as an idea. We could technically move from a point where we say, okay, let's cut every single wage line by X dollars based off of a percent. Like they wanted to bring it to 60, we're gonna cut it based off of bringing it only to the 50th percentile. And we, just to make our math easier, we do it on all the wage lines and then allow the town to basically move the money where it needs to be moved, knowing that they're going to move it.
I don't like that, because I
Okay.
think that's dishonest to the voters. I don't think that's presenting to the voters an accurate picture of the decision they're making.
I just don't think I can
And-
arbitrarily decide for the,
Well, I'm
Yeah.
not saying we arbitrarily decide. This is why we have conversations. This is why Kelly is here and Mark is here, and we need to start having these discussions so that we can agree on a path forward that we can all go out and promote and sell. And that's really what I saw missing last year. I mean, one of the main things. This committee did not sell its own budget. And that is that is a failure. So I think we need to be having conversations. I would like to know, my one question though is about the 3 CBAs that were passed last year. Are those bringing those employees up to 60% as well? Or was that 60% decision only enacted for the non-union employees?
So we did look at market data on, when we were comparing those. The one benefit that we do have is you can look at other CBAs and see where other CBAs are going. So we have the ability to try and target about that 50th percentile, because again, we're able to see into the future. We're able to see where other police, where other dispatchers, where other DPW employees are going. So we have the ability to kind of shoot for that 50th percentile, whereas the select board didn't have that benefit. They were collecting data in the summer of 2023 to implement in the summer of 2024. So we did not necessarily target the 60th percentile with those unions, but we have there's just a benefit of more information available to us.
Okay.
What was implemented was only for non-union, is that what you're asking?
Right, so
Yes.
the CBAs are not those 3 CBAs, which just, we're 1 year into them now, those are not reflective of that same target.
You're able to bring them to the average and try and maintain them there for the full 3 years. The thing that throws that off is somebody else that's doing a CBA at the same exact time, ultimately, and wants to
Okay.
make a splash in the market.
Because, I am concerned about equity for years, it was the other way around, right? It was the non-union employees that were not getting equitable pay. Now, I want to make sure that there's equity, especially when the 2 departments that we're hearing so much about an ability to hire are police and fire, which are under CBAs. So-
Danielle, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that. So, as Derek indicated, we do look at the market as a whole, but from the HR perspective, we're not necessarily setting a specific percentage that we hit with each union, because it does depend on their individual market. So, one union may have been 58%, another union may have been 60%. It's going to depend on where that market is trending for that type of work, that skill set. Additionally, when it comes to the analysis between the non-union's target and where our CBAs landed, or where they already were because they were already adopted, the consultants did factor in those pay ranges and scales from the union into the non-union data to make sure we weren't creating compression or any major gaps. So that was all considered as part of that study as well, to make sure that we had the correct distribution within the hierarchy of each department, knowing some members are union and some employees were non-union.
Okay.
Laura?
Thank you.
One second, Laura.
We're a little beyond it now when I first wanted to make the comment, but if we're talking about what got us here, because I agree with everything being said, but we want to remember part of what got us here is not keeping up. So it's striking the balance between keeping up best we can and keeping it down best we can. So we don't want to keep holding back, because that still just pushes it all down the road for later budgets and later community members. I know that's the tough part, but we need to consider it if we're making cuts, because we can't just keep doing that, because we're never going to dig out if we're just pushing it down the line still.
Kelly?
I just want to say that from a select board perspective, I just hope I can stress how important that this was to the select board, to stress that in a default year, knowing that money was tight across the board, that this was so important. And we also had department heads coming to the table, finding creative ways to make things happen so that we could implement this. Because we have towns all across New Hampshire trying to enter into agreements to share and have mutual aid with building inspectors. And people are trying to come up creative ways to share resources, because the situation for hiring our non-union, employees in particular is so dire across the state of New Hampshire. Like, this is very, very important to our town, and the costs, while we can't, for each position, really dictate a specific number, it costs us more money and more staff time to train people, and when the turnover is so high, and we're adding another job to people who already have 3 or 4 job descriptions that they're already managing, like, just to stress to you all how we came to this decision, it wasn't just a very flippant discussion. This was something that we felt was so important, that this was prioritized across the board for the select board and all of the department heads. So that being said, I realize that the cost driver for all of our town departments is primarily salaries. And that is the reality of hiring people. I mean, when we went through this study, some people got a very small percentage, some people got much larger percentages based on what they were doing, based on consolidating people who had been doing 4 or 5 jobs for years and not being compensated for it. And as you can imagine, losing those people adds an incredible amount of work to all of our other already overworked staff members. So I get it, and I'm not saying that any part of this discussion is wrong or I don't agree with it theoretically, but the reality of all of our departments right now is that this is not getting any easier, and if we want to have creative discussions on how to make other things change, that, you know, that is what it is. How many employees did we impact? Do you remember?
So I believe it was 57 full-time positions? Or
Right.
Positions, not necessarily
Yes.
employees. And then I think we had 6 part-times.
And this is also our group of employees that do not fall under CBA, so they don't ever consistently have anybody advocating for them. So there was a lot of inequity in certain areas throughout town. So again, I just really want to stress to you how long we talked about this, how in-depth with, again, the board itself and all of our town departments on creative ways across the board to make this happen, because it was that important to us.
I think, I understand that the select board thought it was important, like in a default, but I think that when the voters are gonna see, when they see like this increase, I don't see, like, I feel like what I'm saying as chair of the committee, not on behalf of anybody else, we're being dealt a losing hand, because I don't think I can go out and support a budget with a 13.5% increase,
Why not?
because I just don't think I can support that. I don't think,
I don't think the taxpayers.
in my opinion, I mean,
I mean, we had members of this committee
if this
not
goes to
supporting it
default,
last
let me
year.
ask you, if this goes to default, is the select board going to do this again and cut more services for these pay increases?
I can't speak to future boards, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So 6 months of this wage increase is already in the default budget, correct?
No.
No.
Why wouldn't it be in default? Because it's what we're
Because-
spending this year.
Because it wasn't approved by the voters.
But it was.
No, it was
No.
not. I understand
final
the.
number was.
I understand the school moves their non-union employees up every year and then puts it into default. That was not approved by the voters.
Well, oh, boy, Derek.
It wasn't approved, it was not approved by the voters. That's why you have the 2023 appropriation in those wage lines. I know the school does it differently. I advise the select board. We advise the select board.
It's a bottom line budget. I mean, it's the default is how do you, it's the floor of how do you continue what you did, what you're doing right now.
But if you were gonna do a budget transfer into those lines from somewhere else, wouldn't you leave that other line reduced?
Yeah,
Okay, then,
you would. I mean, yeah, but it would still be in the default budget. I mean, it would still be in the upcoming default budget.
Danielle?
So, a couple points on that. So, it's in the default budget in that the bottom line number is still the bottom line number. However, in the individual lines, we have been advised on multiple occasions that the letter of the law by the attorneys is that it is the individual categories in the amount so approved on the budget forms the prior year. So we have to go back, reduce it back to that amount, essentially transfer it back to its original purpose and show it there as a default. So in that way, it's looking like on a detail to this level, a granular level, where you're seeing each line, each function, and each subcategory, you're seeing the 2023 amount for those wages, and it looks like a jump because now has 6 months that was transferred but not held over into the default. So the bottom line default amount of, 25 million is still there.
You're seeing 18 months, is basically what
Okay.
you're seeing in those salary lines. You're
But in
seeing
the-
18 months worth of increase.
Okay. Okay, so here's my suggestion. We have to keep going on the line by line. So what I would like to know, though, is a breakdown of that 2.9 million, that difference between proposed and default, the big chunks of it. Not every little line, that would take forever, but the big chunks, like health insurance. The health insurance increase is not in the default, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so what's the total? I mean, I know it's in here, but it's divided between all these different departments and everything else. I want to start looking at like big chunks of money in that difference. That's what I request.
Yeah, and some of that was in the proposed budget presentation that we did under the overview slides.
Okay. So I see like percentages, but I want to see a dollar amount, because like I said, if the health insurance is spread between all these different lines.
Health insurance is in one line.
Oh,
Department
it is
15.
now?
Yeah, so that's on
Okay.
page 6. We have all the benefits townwide. So you've got about $140,000.
Page 6, which, are you talking about the budget presentation?
I'm sorry, I'm not. I'm talking about the budget detail. I apologize.
All right. The wage increase, though, I'm gonna need you guys to pull that number together. Like, what are we talking about?
We could provide that. It'll take some calculation.
So I also kind of want to look at, if it's an 18-month increase, the 6-month that already happened, maybe some math over what the reduction total in the budget would look like if we gave another 6-month pay raise, the equivalent of a 6-month pay raise, instead of a full 12-month raise.
I'm not sure which
I'm-
number
I'm
you're
not-
looking
I'm
for.
not-
So every pay raise, reducing that by 50% for this next year,
Not by 50%
to 50% of the target.
But
I would like to
getting
see
the
how much
50th
math that
percentile.
is. Like how much that,
So a reduction in employee salaries?
From current?
no, a reduction in future employee salaries. Because the increase is based on, the select board wanted to get it to 60%. I want to know what the math would be if we, next year, reduced their increase 50%. So we're still increasing their salaries, but
But they're
not
not
to the
getting that
target.
every year.
What?
They're not getting 60% every year.
No, I'm not, I don't think
I
you guys
think,
understand.
the mechanism that you could do it by is, the recommendation in the pay plan was to maintain the matrix moving forward. So department heads proposed a 3.3% adjustment to the matrix on July 1st. So
which would keep them at that 60th percentile. Is that what?
a year
roughly?
behind,
A year behind.
A year behind.
yes. So this is
Okay.
the 2016 pay study all over again. where
Yeah, I
you
don't
do it-
remember that at all.
Okay. But that is a number that is very easy that we could, the other increase that employees have under this pay plan is it is a 12-step matrix. They proceed through that matrix.
So are you saying to hold them at all right, the proposed budget is an increase above the 6-month pay that they just had? Is that what you're telling us?
On July 1st, we have a proposed step increase for those employees that are eligible,
Okay,
that are not at the top step,
okay.
and also an adjustment to the matrix.
So their basically year, when they would get reviewed and get any adjustments, is July 1.
Yes.
So, and are you talking about, instead of taking non-union to the 60th percentile, we'd take them to the 50th percentile?
Somewhere in the middle there.
Somewhere in the middle there. Which
Because this is,
wouldn't that be a pay reduction now?
And that's what I wanted to clarify, because I believe we could probably go to it's actually probably in the study what the 50th percentile is. That would have to be a pay reduction.
I'm not talking about reducing existing salaries, but that's the main driver of our cost. So I kind of want to look at like what options the committee has, because I can't even see like, department by department, I can't really see like the total, like the whole picture, so.
That's why I asked them for that.
I'm like, I feel like I'm like grasping for air on this.
So are you asking for the non-union staff, because they were given an increase in July, and then this year we budgeted at that rate in our proposed budget for them to be on that step for January to June, and then to move to the next step if they're eligible on July 1st for the last 6 months of the year. So are you asking for us to break out what it would be if they received no step?
I think that's the way you want to go. I think we want to look at, the
That,
two
like,
options
we were
would
to
be.
freeze them?
Would be they get a step on July 1 of 2025, or they don't get a step, but they stay, we're not reducing their pay. They just don't get that step in July.
So what you have in your budget is employees would receive a step, and you would adjust the matrix to keep up with the market. We can quantify that on what that amount is.
Okay.
That'll-
Yeah.
I
is
think
that
it's a
where
conversation
you
that the
wanna go?
committee needs to have, because we can go line by line, but it's really like tough to look at whole picture without that information.
I'm not opposed to that, but I also want to echo what Jared just said. If we're talking about messing with people's salaries, this committee is not empowered to do that. That is
Right.
going to have to be a conversation with the select board, and ultimately, they have to make that decision, in my opinion.
There's nothing stopping the committee from reducing the total budget by a certain amount, though, either. So, Allison and Olivia.
Derek, were the employees made aware of the STEP program and kind of what they could look forward to?
Yes.
So if we went ahead with this, and again, I know we can cut the budget and you guys don't have to do it, but if we did, the employees would by far know that we decided not to continue to keep them up into the 60th with their 3%, correct? It's not like this is something you guys were doing behind the scenes. Every employee in the town would know that this was the plan.
Yes, and if the
Okay.
future select board implements it the way that you're discussing it this evening, we would advise the select board to explain that, the appropriation was reduced by what the select board asked, and this is how they were moving forward.
Okay.
Olivia.
My concern with all of this is exactly what I said at our last meeting, that this is how we lose quality department heads and quality employees. So while I understand that the proposed budget right now is huge, and I'm not necessarily advocating that we don't make reductions, by going about it this way, I think we ultimately would be removing all the work the select board did with department heads of trying to retain quality employees.
No, I understand, but I don't have a crystal ball, but I have been in this town long enough to know that maybe the voters might not approve this budget, and if they don't, they're gonna get nothing, so.
I think all of us have been here long enough to know
I-
that.
So that, I think we are responsible to at least look at this information, if anything. So that's why I'm requesting it. Hopefully the committee backs me on this, but that's what I see as cost drivers in the budget anyways. But Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Would this be a good time to talk about some capital things? There's one particular interest, I think we could have a big cut.
Okay, let's,
I'm happy to hold off, but I'd like
Yeah,
to bring
let-
that up at some point.
yeah, let's try to,
Back to line by line.
let's go back to the line by line and try to get through town hall. Maybe take a 5-minute break, and then we can come back at this. So I've been on page 2, but I think maybe page 3 might be a good idea.
So I do have a question about, under revaluation of property, the consulting services line.
What line are you in?
45030 in revaluation of property. It's at 22.5, which is what it was last year. The year, Oh, I guess that, well, we're only at like 18,000.
For year-to-date encumbered, right?
Yeah, for year-to-date and encumbered.
Yeah, so we had a little bit of a reduction this year, but we are looking to restart our measure and list contract to do 800 parcels. Because again, we're on a cyclical where we have to do every 5 years revalue. So this year, we chose to spend those funds on updating our GIS maps and our GIS online platform. So we did have some savings there, but we anticipate that we would be spending about $16,800 on the measure and list, and then miscellaneous consulting for appraisals as needed would be $5,700.
Laura?
Thank you. I know we're gonna keep going line by line, and that's fine. I think mostly because that's easier way to ask questions. But, and this is kind of an overall thing now that we've had all these discussions that, I mean, I haven't been on this board a long time, but this has never even come close to this type of discussion. And I know every little bit counts, but these, compared to the amount of the budget, these little bits we're cutting, little line here, little line here. I guess I don't know efficiency-wise, like, that's gonna really add up to nothing when it comes to the amount of this budget and the amount we feel like we need to get it down for it to pass. I don't think I know a better way. I know we threw out in the beginning, some people threw out the idea of like, okay, what percent would we like to see? And we thought that was arbitrary to just throw that out there without looking. But I'm starting to think, even if we go line by line and spend more sessions than we have doing all of this, the amount we're gonna come to is still, the taxpayer's not even gonna feel that when it comes down to percent. So I don't have an answer, but I don't know if this is any longer what makes sense based on the fact that we're not just trying to cut like $250K to save people a little money. Like, I just don't know how to proceed because this no longer makes sense.
Okay, Frank?
Peter?
It seems like the question is, how are we going to get a budget to pass? How are we going to get something that's appealing enough for the residents? And Laura's right, if we go through and we nip at all the edges, it's not going to be, I don't think it's substantial enough for us to be able to, quote as we're saying, sell it to our neighbors to say, hey, listen, we got it down at 11.6%. It's going to be a tough sell. So there's two parts. There's one, going through the line by line, which is the tough grinding kind of work we're doing. And number two, I think it would be prudent for all of our members to think of where substantially we can look. And it may not be pleasant. But in order to get a budget to pass, to me, that sounds like a requirement. You know, if my compensation for my job went down 20%, I've got to find it. And it might not be pleasant. I might not like it. So I think that's what we're looking at. And I appreciate everybody's feedback on looking at this, because this is the glaring issue. This is the elephant in the room. And, you know, I think that would do us all well to think, where substantially can we look? Where is the biggest expense? Salaries, positions. We're not going to like it. It's not our optimal, I don't think. But I think that's eventually where we could get to a number that will pass.
Peter?
Can I speak directly, Laura, to my philosophy of why I think this is still important, no matter what?
Yeah, because I'm not.
Yeah, so that's why I want to say, like, I don't think I've ever really voiced this, but, so I still think, regardless, unless someone finds a better way, it's still very important that we continue to do the line-by-line work. And to me, it pays dividends in a lot of ways. So it's not just about the fact that we're really taking a look here, right? That at like, okay, what are the inefficiencies here in terms of year to year, where we're like, whoa, there's something glaring, right? And we notice that. But if we stopped doing that, the ramifications could be drastic, in the sense that everyone who is coming and talking to us, and I'm not saying anyone would do anything with malice or anything, but, right, when you know you have accountability at the table, you're going to present yourself knowing that there's going to be accountability at the table. So I think, frankly, it helps in the way that budgets are built for future years too, that we all know that we're going to be sitting down and looking at and investigating every single line. So that's why I think it still has to happen.
Yeah, not to mention, we've already done it on the school budget, so equity-wise, I feel like we should at least consider
Yeah.
the downside.
No, and I should say, I didn't mean we should stop doing it. I just feel like we need another plan as well.
Yeah.
Because getting through, like last year, for example, we got through it line by line, we were like, okay, we're done. We're not gonna be done. So I'm not sure what our other plan is once we finish this part, because this isn't gonna be cutting enough, even though the doing of it is important. And we will be able to question things and make reductions where we see fit. But yeah, after that, there's gonna need to be something else. And it worries me that, and I didn't think of it this way until Frank, you said it. It worries me because I don't think the town is in a place to cut positions right now because we already don't have enough people. So I'm not sure where else to go. And I just wanted to voice that now because I was thinking it now. And I don't know what we're gonna do when we get to the end.
All right.
This is what budget committees do. I mean, this is
No,
the way
I
it's always
understand this
worked
is
in
our
the past.
job.
There's always been a part two, and
Yeah.
it didn't happen last
Yeah,
year,
we didn't
and
do
it
it.
should have.
Right.
So, I mean, we'll get there, and maybe it'll blow up in our faces, and maybe it won't. But
Okay.
you just gotta wait and see
Trust the
what happens.
process.
You gotta trust the process.
Okay.
All right, page 3. We're gonna keep going.
Yeah.
We're already up to 3?
Already page 3, yep. Page 4.
I guess the line on mobile communications under information technology, 50230. This is another one that, it's a pretty big jump.
Yeah,
And it
so
doesn't
we
match
have.
the year-to-date.
Yeah, in that line, currently, all of our sworn officers are using their personal cell phones for a lot of, and Chief, maybe you can speak a little bit more eloquently than I can.
Raw night.
So currently, we deploy different technologies, body cameras, SharePoint that has our roll calls on them. Different data is put out into our infrastructure through the internet. Currently, our officers are using their personal devices to tag body cameras, do certain things, look at certain information that is on our police servers, and it's getting to the point that we really can't do that, we shouldn't do that, and I've talked to IT about this at great length, and we're creating almost a security vulnerability with our own softwares by allowing this. So what I've asked is that we've tried to look at having like a cruiser car, cruiser phone, but that wasn't going to work because of the way we log into our systems. So I've asked IT to budget for every sworn police officer to have a department-issued cell phone. So currently, we have our administrative team has them, our detectives have them, our SROs have them. And I'm looking to just outfit the rest of our team for them. And also, they use it for their authentication. So when they log into their server, to their sites, their SharePoint, their email, it's asking them for a two-factor authenticator code. I think a lot of us have that, or a text message. They're using their personal devices for that. And quite honestly, we don't pay them for that. They shouldn't have to use that. I think they do it more convenience. And I really got to get to the point that we're giving them the assigned devices to do their job. The other part of this that we're trying to figure out is if we could get these devices and have it work the way we envision it, not only does it help us hit that goal, is now they can use it, because department issued cell phone, now they can use it for their camera. So instead of us buying the bigger end, high-end cameras that we use, that some of the officers on midnight shift don't like using because they don't really know how to use some of these bigger cameras or have been trained properly, or we have the point and shoots, they can just take the shots with the iPhone, and which I think most of us can say that the iPhone cameras are pretty decent. That can then upload directly from that device to the cloud and have it in our, where we store our evidence. So instead of them taking the picture from the old camera, bringing it into the station, plug it into the computer, uploading it in there, and then it's more of an efficiency thing. That's kind of the ultimate vision, is to let them have the ability to do some of their logins, their looking at their roll call, important information on not their personal device, but their work device, and then also be able to use it as a camera as well.
Okay, so there's only $10,000 additional dollars in this line. That's not gonna get you cell phones for everybody.
So that's 9 months?
Sure.
That's 9 months, starting April 1st.
I think what we did was we talked about, based on the vote in March, that if it voted through, they would put that money in March, right? Is that the way we looked at that?
Yes, yeah, so we have 25 mobile devices at a unit cost of $180 for the year. And then we have the associated data plan that would go along with it.
So you're gonna get, how are you getting phones for $180 a year?
You're basically financing them, right, correct, Brian?
Sorry, there's like a three-way how this goes.
With our Verizon account, the phones that we'd be looking at are going to be somewhere between $0 and $100. We tend to get a significantly reduced price for the devices because of the plan that we're on.
Okay.
So we'll be able to get the phones roughly $0 to $150. It depends on the time of year, depends on what sales Verizon has going on. I try to time that. It doesn't always work out the way I want. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. It just depends on what Apple is doing or what Samsung is doing for
Okay.
sales and rebates.
Okay. So you're gonna be one of those people in the Apple store who goes in and buys 10 phones at once and they say, that's it, and that's all you get.
They're not getting 16s.
Yeah,
They're getting
no.
12s.
Yeah.
Doug?
Yeah, thank you, Frank. Do I address you as Mr. Assistant Chair? Or
Vice.
Vice Chair? Vice Chair?
Whatever you like.
All right, Mr. Vice Chair. Where I work, the company doesn't pay for phones, and there's a lot of business activity on the phones. And they offer software that will manage and keep separate via secure VPN and whatnot. Has that been considered so that they could still use their personal devices and be able to demarcate between personal and work-related stuff?
Yeah,
Software available and licenses and stuff like that that can still.
We do have software that.
Because
Sorry.
the difficulty I see, I don't know, maybe, but when you have two devices, that can really disrupt, do they carry their personal phone around on them and the separate phones, and now they got two phones they have to walk around with?
I currently do that. Most of my team does that. It's the
Okay.
administrative staff. We carry two phones. Trust me, I don't like having two phones, but I have to separate personal versus work, right? And when I'm trying, before I had this, and I had my personal phone, I was logging into our systems on my personal phone that could be targeted for malware that's not being checked by the IT department, that now is crossing that, blending that line of work versus personal. He's told me that can't work anymore because of security risk, not to mention other things that go on, statewide with 91As and everything else. So we have to do that where it's separated, so that way and the officers would carry. It's no different than them having their own assigned body cam, their own assigned taser, their own assigned firearm. They would carry as part of their assigned equipment for the day.
Okay, so second follow-up. So do I misunderstand? Is it just you or selected people that have 2 phones now, or you're talking about updating the whole force to do this? Is that what I'm
So
understanding?
currently, I have my command staff, which is, well, with me included, it's 5 of us, chief, captain, and 3 lieutenants. We are all on call at different times of the year. None of us get paid a stipend for that. So what we do is we give them a phone, so when they're out there doing work outside of their 8 to 4 job, because we're all salary, they have the ability to go to the schedule, update the schedules, get called in, take phone calls that might be on their work phone and not their personal phone. Our detectives, because they're not always in the office, they're out investigating or field involved, they have cell phones, they talk to victims on that. Our SROs, well, the one that's in the high school, he currently has a cell phone assigned to him because he might be at his desk here, he might be at Maple Ave, he might be at Mountain View, he might be at Bartlett, he might be at Glen Lake, he might be out chasing a kid down Mass Road. And he needs a phone as well to be able to talk to parents on the spot, have the parents call him. He has that ability right there. We've also talked about having the assigned phones in the building, like like the regular phones that have like a soft feature where you can have an app installed on your phone and then it calls that. Then that's, you're putting another app that's work-related on a personal phone. So it kind of blends and it shouldn't. I don't know if that answers your question or.
Sort of, I guess, Brian.
So what I'm trying to do is get all the officers, no matter who you are, assigned a phone. So that way, there's no discrepancy of who you are, what position you're in. You're being assigned this department-issued equipment, and you're using it in accordance with our policies.
Brian, do you have any?
Brian, go ahead.
Comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The IT.
Oh, yeah, yes, Brian Ray.
No, I'll echo most of what he said. To answer your question about containerization of applications, we have that. The issue is on some of these personal devices, because we have a government account for our Microsoft licensing, if they have a personal Microsoft account on their device, they both can't coexist on the same device. So we've run into issues where we've literally had to get another device for that person so that they can actually get their email on a portable device. So yes, we have containerization, yes, we're trying to protect the applications, but we're also loosening our cybersecurity controls so that they can kind of have that usability. So it's a very delicate balance between the security and the usability.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you.
All set, Doug?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Brian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Chief, is this more of a, like, it's not a state statute, it's more of a best practice you're asking for to separate the personal and the business for your?
Yeah, there is no mandate on this. This is us trying to keep up with the technology that we have in this agency and in this town to have our officers be more efficient at their job. There's no mandate.
Okay, so.
The mandate is body cameras, so our officers, we all have body cameras, but what they're doing is when they take a video and they're on the side of the road and that video stops, they then connect to their body cameras with their phone, and we call it tagging, but they put the case number, they put what the case was, and that, to that nature, and it stores it on the camera until they bring it back to the station. The only alternative of that is at the end of their shift, or throughout their shift, they put the body cam in the dock, it uploads to the cloud, they gotta wait till that happens, then they gotta log into the account on the computer, and they gotta go through their entire day, and they gotta pull out the calls for the day, and they have to manually go through one by one and type it all in. If that's at the end of your shift, now we're holding them over their shift or making them do it the next day, and they're not out on the road being proactive. They're sitting in the station, putting their body camera information into the system. So it's kind of more of a, as we are expanding our technology in law enforcement, we're trying to catch up with the officers to make sure that they are utilizing new technologies and being more efficient as well. Part of this other thing is when they're out on the road and they have to call victims or talk to people, they're using their personal phones, I think, and they, with their numbers going to anybody that they call, and then, or they have to come back to the station, use a phone, or sit at the fire station, use a phone. So it's kind of giving them more ability to sit out on the side of the road and make the phone calls and do the things they have to do, log into the network and do some work on the street, and hoping that can keep us more efficient out on the road rather than being at the station. That's
Okay.
kind of the gist of it.
Just as a follow-up, so say this appropriation didn't go through, it was reduced, what is the hardship to your department if that didn't, say, go through?
Well, we're just going to keep doing what we always do.
Okay.
And we try to make it work, right? And I think what we've been doing we got our body cams, I think we're one of the first in the state back in 14. And we've just kind of been evolving, and we have all this technology, and, we sit back and talk about how do we use it properly and how do we use it efficiently, and this is one of the ways. If it doesn't happen, and we don't get the appropriation, then I guess we're gonna go back to our officers and say, we didn't get body cam, we didn't get phones, right? So now we go back to what we've always done. Sit at the fire station,
Yeah.
come back to the station. Some of these officers literally can just say, I'm not using my personal device for any of this. I'm not, no way. You're not requiring me to do this, which we don't. But then they have to sit in the station and manually do a bunch of other stuff that's a little bit less efficient, but that's the way we do it.
Just one last comment. So I see both sides of this. I think me personally, I'm inclined for this just because of the separation. Like, for me at work, it's BYOD, bring your own device. So most companies, not so much the municipality, will actually work with the employee to use their own device. But this is a little different because it has to deal with public, so I get it. So I appreciate you kind of going through that.
We have some security, we have, databases that are classified to a
Yeah.
certain extent that maybe your private company does too, but you're only logging into just that private company. We have access to information that,
Yeah, no, it's, yeah. Thank you.
Hey, Frank?
As we go through cuts, I think we should be mindful to be looking at efficiency, and one thing the chief said was, this is gonna save time of the officers and be more efficient, and from my math, correct me if I'm wrong, 25 devices at $180 per year is about 17,000-ish. That is approximately $680 for an officer per year. Would having this cell phone save $50 a month in efficiency per officer?
Absolutely. And we're talking.
To me, it's a no-brainer.
We're asking for 25, but the ultimate goal here is we have 32 sworn police officers and 2 part-timers currently. So in theory, that would be 34 devices. And yeah, to have the efficiency, the security of the vulnerabilities we potentially are exposing ourselves to is definitely worth it. At some point, we'll now put this out there to the group. If this works out and we start to go through this change, and we start to realize that the iPhone's cameras are working great, maybe we don't need to buy 3 or 4 other cameras that cost us anywhere between $500 to $1,500. Obviously, detectives might have a higher end camera, or the supervisor's car might have that one, but we don't need 5. So we might be able to see if this is working for our needs and slow down that end in the future. Not there yet, because we haven't tried it, but that might be a possibility for us in our vision of how that works.
Right. I mean, to me, this is the equivalent of a lumberjack getting a sharper axe, and it costs $50 a month. To me, this is a no-brainer. So, that's it.
Okay, so are we good with this line? All right. I'm going to try to keep us moving. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Brian. Planning, zoning, economic development. Moving on to page 5.
I just wanted to ask really quickly for legal services. Our spend this year is 10,000, budgeted was 21 after the revision.
Is that anything in land court, like to defend the town's position on something?
So yes, that's any time that planning board, historic district commission, or zoning board, there's appeal to the court. That is also review of condominium documents, anything like that. A lot of times when it's dealing with a specific development, we actually do receive a revenue back from it, but we do have to maintain. And I just want to provide you with the updated year-to-date on that line, because we do actually have a zoning board appeal. So our year-to-date is $14,072 for that.
And I don't know, do you have access to like just going a few years back? Because I only have obviously actuals going back to 2023. On that line, do those actuals fluctuate a lot?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So in '23, it was 21,000. I think at one point this line was maybe at 35,000, and we reduced it quite a bit. The hard thing about legal is we want to show the true cost to that division and what that division is costing. But ultimately, this year, this legal line was lower, but the admin one is absolutely blown up. I think I'm probably $6,000 or $7,000 over that one. So,
Would you be able to like just like rally off like maybe like the past 6 years or so? Is that like available?
I'm
to you
sorry,
right now?
the only actual I have is 23 here.
Oh, you only have 23 as well?
Yeah,
Okay. I didn't know if you had that.
No.
I'll get to the point of why I'm asking. I'm trying to find those types of lines where it's like, okay, can the ones that we have a lot of fluctuation on, that we could possibly adjust down to be accounting for the fact that maybe the median's a little less than what we're budgeting for, right? Not saying we're not going to spend that next year, but just saying that we're like, okay, we think on average, maybe we're spending a little less than that.
So, and I understand that, and I understand, it's a tough job to do. Right now, admin legal services, I had $6,000 budgeted. I'm at $14,546. So, and then the only other office in town hall that has legal, I believe, is our assessor's office, the reval of property. So we try not to, we kind of watch the trends, and a lot of the times when we're doing the budget, you're simply moving that number. So I think this year, or a couple of years ago, we moved some away from planning and zoning and moved it into admin. So we've tried to keep that line, those 3 lines pretty level.
I saw that Danielle had a follow-up for you.
I was just going to add the comment that as we review our budget development, I know that in the finance office and department heads as well, we tend to look on at least a 3 to 5 year average for figuring out where we think an appropriation would be averaged for especially lines that fluctuate, but really all lines, and then we add to or subtract, any one-time purchase type thing that's specific to that year.
All set, Peter?
I am.
Move on to page 5.
I have a question.
Samantha?
Line right at the top, 59030, the wellness committee expenses. What does the wellness committee do?
So the Wellness Committee is a proactive group where, right now, it's actually just me. There isn't a committee at the moment. But it stems from our HR functions, where we're encouraging employees to have a healthy lifestyle. So the Wellness Committee offers benefits, like if an employee participates in a road race, the Wellness Committee could reimburse them up to $50 registration fee.
It's like that thing where like if you get a flu shot, you get $25 kind of thing.
Kind of, but our flu shots, we don't
Not that,
reimburse
but
because they're
just
covered.
example, yeah. Like that's
Yeah.
what my company does, okay.
Yep. There's also trainings that are put on by the Wellness Committee, so trainings that are going to encourage employees to learn about additional benefits or start participating, having physical activity. So those trainings, any costs associated with them, come from this wellness line. We also have another revenue through our health insurance, where we're able to, if we participate and have an assigned wellness coordinator for the town, and we attend the training, the annual training once a year with them, they will pay $500 that the town can use towards wellness-related things as well. This year, you'll notice that it's low simply because we were understaffed and not able to focus on proactive training. So that money was not utilized as fully at this point.
Okay, page 6 wraps up town hall. Jared?
Just page 5 kind of gives the town hall total. I know page 6 is more the insurance. The question that I have is, knowing that before the changes that were made tonight, the select board proposed budget was $3,424,642, which is $386,287 more than the default, which is 12.7% higher. Are we going to have any additional revenues associated with this added increase? So basically what I'm trying to understand is there going to be an offset in revenues that also correlate with the higher number in expenses we have for town hall?
I'd like to say motor vehicles, but I think motor vehicle revenue is really meant to offset the costs that you spend on your highways. We did increase motor vehicles, but no, we do not have any specific revenues increases.
Thank you.
All right, anything else on town hall? Derek?
Do you mind, we do have a...
Oh, CIP, yeah.
Yeah, we do have CIP.
Do you remind me what page that is?
Page 18?
17?
17, yes, thank you. So, we do have one, it's marked under election for computers and communication. This is the cost to purchase 5 new ballot counting devices. I would say you could reduce this line by $15,000. The state is doing a grant program for every replacement of a current ballot counting device in the amount of $3,500. They're not doing it as a reimbursement grant. They actually want to be invoiced the amount from whoever we select as the vendor. So they'll pay the first $3,500 and we'll pay the remainder. But with $3,500, we believe we could get this project done in 2025.
Okay, so you're talking about line 909014001.
Yes, the 48450.
Okay, so I'm gonna move to reduce that line from 50,000 to what?
35.
35,000. So a $15,000 delta,
Mr. Chair?
right?
Well, I have a question, Derek. So you're
Do you
saying...
need a second first?
I'm sorry?
Do you need a
Yeah,
second?
is there a second first?
I'll second your motion.
Second by Sam. Go ahead.
Thank you. No, did you say, Derek, that each machine is $3,500?
No,
No.
it's a,
No, the state of New Hampshire will pay $3,500
towards-
towards the replacement costs for the new one, so.
And how much are each unit?
There's two different vendors, and I
Okay.
think we figured that the final cost after the state paid would be at max would be $7,000 per unit. So some of them are a little bit more, and then they also have some add-ons that the moderator may want that have some programming where you can actually view some of the totals as they come in.
Yeah? Okay, that helps, thank you.
Yep.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I don't
Like
know
nerding
for
out
the
on that.
moderators, but yeah, there's some different functionality. There's two vendors
Okay.
that were approved by the Ballot Law Commission, and they have different functionality. The
Okay.
town clerk is waiting. One vendor has to clear one more hurdle on the federal level, and then once both are cleared, she's going to come forward to the select board with a recommendation.
Okay. Elizabeth?
So is that the grant program that you mentioned earlier? Or is there an additional grant to offset these?
So this is a one-time grant that's valid until, I believe, June 30th of 2026.
But there isn't any additional, I thought at some point I heard you say it was a 50% grant, but maybe I misheard.
If I did, I misspoke. It's $3,500 per
Okay.
ballot counting device.
Okay.
And
The 7K per unit.
Well, it's
it's
10,500 per unit.
We
roughly.
expect it to be about $10,000 per
So
unit.
the reduction to 35,000 accounts for that credit we're gonna get.
Okay.
And Derek, am I correct that this is the grant that's first come, first served? So when they run out of the funds, they said it would be
I
only
think-
until,
The Secretary of State's office has said that this program will be available until June 30th of 2026, and they feel confident that there will be enough funds there. I don't want to wait until 2026 to do that in case the state does reallocate that money for some other purpose.
Derek, can you remind me what the $300,000 is for?
That was for the search, the refresh of our servers. We ended up using existing funds in the 2024 budget as well as some of our remaining COVID funds for that. So we actually.
So we no longer need that? Okay,
Correct.
it's not
So
in the
that's
budget.
why it's not in the select board column.
Okay.
Oh, I was just making sure you weren't moving on, because Liberty had
Do
a
we have to-
motion on the table.
Oh, yeah, that's
You gotta vote
right.
on your motion.
Okay. Yeah, no, I forgot about that. Thank you. So you keep me
Yeah.
on track. All right, so
Not known for this.
any
too,
discussion
so.
on my motion to reduce that line by 15,000? As a suggestion from Derek? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? Abstentions? Laura Stevens abstains. So it's 14 to 0 to 1. Motion carries. Any other questions on town hall? All right, it's only 2 hours, so we're gonna get back at, I'm gonna recess until 8:11. That's 5 minutes. Go. back.
America's doing it.
Oh, what page are you on?
We're recording.
No, in this one. I like keeping my,
You got it?
You okay?
Do you want an apple? I have an apple.
All right. We are on the police budget now. That is page 7. The chief's here for support if needed.
Mr. Chairman, may I address the committee?
Of course.
Yeah. So, just for clarification, I'm Chief Eric Serino. Two things. First, if I could just mention that a couple weeks ago, I don't remember now, the days are getting blended, of when I sat up here and talked about a few things. I don't know that I articulated exactly what, Joe, you had asked about the SRO at Mountain View, and I had talked about how we don't have enough staffing. I wanted to make sure I was very clear, and I think I was, but I'm not sure. I went back and watched it, and sometimes I talk too much. We need a SRO at the school, but we're not fully staffed. So when we are fully staffed, or we have enough officers that are on the street, on patrol every day, out there serving the entire community, once we get to that certain number, we will start putting those officers in the schools. And what I was trying to explain to the group, when Joe asked me that, was when we have all these people in specialized assignments and other things that aren't particularly patrolling the street every day, when we start losing patrol officers to other agencies, we pull those officers out of different specialized assignments and put them back into patrol to actually serve the entire community and not just the school district. So I wanted to make sure I made that clear, that that is the goal. We'll get there when we get there, but eventually, essentially, when we are fully staffed, that is kind of what we have to do operationally. So I wanted to make sure I made that point clear, that we're not fully staffed. The other thing, if I may, Mr. Chair, I left this on everybody's desk here. I think Brian asked, or Elizabeth, maybe you did ask for an organizational chart. I would just like to submit for the record that I'm the one that has the organizational chart. Rick stole it from me to begin with. But this is not only our organizational chart, but it's kind of a functional chart that we utilize for accreditation. But what I added to it was you'll see top left, actually I didn't add it, Kelly did, my secretary, so she did it all for me, but you'll see the key on the side where it has a bracket that's allocated, and then the parentheses of what we're staffed. And on the right, I gave you a quick down and dirty where we're at for staffing. So police operationally are 25. Who we have in training right now are 3. Those are the officers that are in FTO or about to go to the academy, so they're not really operational. Vacancies, we have 4 open spots on paper. We're actively seeking 4 candidates. And dispatch the same thing, 9 operational, 0 in training, and 2 vacancies. And that was really my way to give you guys as much information as I can. You've asked for the operational chart, you've asked for, what does the organization look like? Rather than just giving you guys the names and this is exactly how our organization looks like and how it operates. Obviously, I can answer questions throughout this presentation, or if you guys have my work number to call me, but I just wanted to give that information to the group so you guys have it.
Thank you, Chief. Jared.
Thank you.
Quick question, Mr. Chair?
Yeah,
Thank you.
calling on Jared
As a
first.
comment, as it related to SRO, and specifically being the school board rep, Danielle, this might be a question for you. I know that a couple of years ago, we had funded the GTV prior was in the town budget, but because we agreed that the SRO, the second SRO, would be picked up by the town, because we used to pay for it at the school board, but we would fund the GTV. Does this sound familiar, that there was a swap, that we would no longer support the SRO even though it would be at the school, but also that we would fund the GTV salaries for individuals?
So the GTV was an added position.
Mhm.
The school was looking for additional coverage of their, not just meetings, but games and other resources. So they wanted a position added, and at the time, we had said, we don't have the funding in the GTV revolving fund, we don't have the funding in the town budget to be able to support an additional full-time position. So the school had said, what if we reassign those SRO dollars to the GTV to add a second position, and we do bill the school for that education position at the PEG, that's what it's called, PEG Access TV. And then the SRO position is still in the department's allocation, but we're not billing the school for an offsetting revenue. So they have the same number of officers allocated in their organizational chart based on staffing availability.
But we used to pay for that second SRO in the school budget. We no longer do that. And we're no longer getting that benefit, but we're still paying for the GTV.
You are paying for GTV for
Yeah.
a position.
And we're no longer getting the benefit of a second SRO that we no longer pay for because we absorbed the GTV position in our agreement.
Whether or not the position is filled as a second SRO is still allocated.
But do we have a physical person as an end user service getting that person to support what we need at the school system?
When we don't have 5 vacancies, yes, and in the meantime, it's my understanding that the chief has assigned a rotation of people in and out of coverage for that school in the meantime.
So because we can't get the coverage, should we be trying to send GTV back into this budget? Because we're not getting the actual coverage that we had before and we're getting a degradation of services?
So why would the school board,
We used to pay for it,
you used to pay for,
the second SRO in our budget.
you did, and then you stopped paying for it, and the town maintained that 30-second sworn officer.
Yeah, but we also included, as part of the agreement, was that we would pick up the GTV costs in our budget.
We don't have a formal
So
agreement between the two.
we actually don't have a formal agreement, and at the time.
We don't have an
that-
MRO understanding, I agree with that, but that was the understanding that I had at the time. Am I
At the
incorrect?
time, we only had one full-time GTV position. At the SAU's request, we hired a second full-time GTV staff to be paid for from the school district.
So I'm just, again, voicing that concern. I know that we're doing the best we can to fill it, but when we talk about those symbiosis of our funds between the town and school, the school board covers things, the town covers things, whether the town is mowing our grass, whether they're plowing our driveways, which we greatly appreciate. We are also making sure that we open up our gyms, we open up our schools so that we can have meetings. And this just goes to show that there is a lot of this kind of interactivity that we have to support each other. And I'd hope that we understand it and continue to move forward with it. But we are concerned from a school board perspective about that SRO position so much that we're looking at, can we even getting county sheriffs or retired officers to come in to fill that position, especially what's been happening at the middle school. Don't get me wrong, Chief, you've been great. Your force has been great. Every time we call, you're showing up. But not having somebody there also causes problems, and it's reactionary on our current service model that we have. And that is a concern that we have in the school board. Thank you.
Frank?
Chief, just a question. So you're saying until the patrol is fully staffed, there will not be an SRO. Is that an accurate statement?
No. Until we have enough people in place, at my discretion, when I'm ready for our agency to then move that certified officer over to the Mountain View Middle School is when we'll be ready. Now, I'm not gonna tell you that it's, if I hire 4 right now, we fill all 4 shifts that we're ready, we could be ready with 2 more people.
Right.
If we get certified officers that come through the door and they start, that time of training, getting them operationally, cuts the time in, almost in half, right? We're getting them on the road in 10 weeks opposed to 60 at the academy, 12 in FTO, and then, whatever else training. So
So it's a floating target.
and
so to speak.
I will say operationally for us, right, there's a lot of moving parts here. And I'll say this, and I'm sorry for my emotion, but Jared, you hit a little nerve on me here.
I apologize.
And it's not about being, you don't have to apologize, but obviously, all of you probably know, I'm a father here first, okay? My kid goes to Mountain View, my kid goes here. So school safety is 100%, without a doubt, not just because my children are there, it's just who I am, it's what we should be doing. But we also have to operate the PD, right? So we have to be able to get our officers to the whole community. So if we lose a person in detectives, which we will next year because he's retiring and that's all we have, I need to get someone in there because who's doing all the backgrounds? We get these new hirings. So we have to really balance the needs of the whole agency, the needs for the whole community, as well as really what the community needs, as far as like the SRO. currently, if we could have a couple more certified people get in and be operationally, will be good. If my 3 that are, you know, in training right now, once they get through the academy, which is January, and then they get through, and, you know, we'll have some more people on the road that can stay there. But the problem is we have to get people from the road to the school. It's not always a 1-for-1. It's not always we just hired an SRO. We have to have an officer who's trained, and then we have to give them special skill sets to go up there.
Okay.
You know, it's, yeah,
Yep.
I don't want to get into more
No,
about.
thank you for clarifying. That was, in essence, what my question was.
Yeah.
Danielle, go ahead.
Just want to clarify, Chief. I know when you say on the road, we're kind of used to what that means, but that
Sorry.
doesn't just mean traffic stops. They're not just sitting on the side of the road trying to catch speeders. They're responding to every call, every emergency that comes through, including all matters of crime,
Yeah.
you know, break-ins, lockouts, lost people, lost pet, whatever it is. It's every service call that the department goes through, plus all of the additional law enforcement duties, correct?
Sure, yeah. So if you look on your flow chart, I gave you your function chart, operations on the left with all the A-team lieutenants, B-team, and then the supervisors in the patrol division, those are your operations. So if those are unfilled, that we have gaps there, we have other gaps in other, on the right side, investigations or support services, those gaps get pulled. So, you know, yeah, so yes. So basically, we have, when operations is not fully staffed, that's less people out there preventing crime, reacting to crime, helping the community, and just general community policing, right? There's less people out there doing the pumpkin regatta or the Halloween trick or treat. There's less officers. So, yes, that's an accurate statement.
Peter, go ahead.
Chief, I'm looking at overtime pay, it's third line in. Derek, do you have an up-to-date on our year-to-date, or more up-to-date than the year-to-date?
So I have an up-to-date right now.
Oh, thank you, Chief.
For line number 41,300, overtime and operations, we are 97% expended, so we're 195,661,041 cents. That is without this week's payroll hitting. And I'd like to, if I may, Mr. Chair, I'd like to talk a little bit about overtime. There's a little bit of a, you know, a thought process in this town that when you get full staff, you have less overtime. That's not always works for the Goffstown Police Department. When we have fully staffed people, every certified officer goes to training every single month. So we have to, that's on their day off. So we have to pay them the overtime to do that. They have court costs that aren't huge, but they have to get paid out of overtime for that. If they're, you know, there's other things that they have to do that requires them for overtime. If they're coming in to cover shifts. We work with the union for minimum staffing, so the overtime, so when someone goes on vacation, we might fill it, we might not. So far, part-timers are helping fill those shifts, but just because we get full staff in theory, doesn't mean the overtime costs go down. That driver still goes up as well. We just don't cover every single shift with overtime, because at that point, our people would never have time to themselves. They would never be home with their families.
Is that part of the driver of wanting to get it back up to the 230?
Well, part of my,
next year?
two things. Part of the driver is because of the increases for the contracts, the CBAs went up, I have to bring that overtime up because everybody's hourly rate went up. So I have to make sure that I'm allocating that fund. I guess that wasn't two things. That was basically the majority of it. Sorry, I was thinking.
Honestly, the second you said that, I was like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Peter. why didn't you say
Because
that?
again, it's as
Yeah.
their rates go up, we have to bring it up. And to be honest with you, I don't even, I went through some of my data, and I went from the actuals to September of '24 when I completed this budget. And, you know, we just hit like certain covers, trainings, holiday time, supervisors' vacations, patrol vacations, and then we did that in dispatch, which is a different budget line. But if you look at our total cost of our averages of what we're just seeing to September, we were at $358,000 of overtime. If we covered every single vacation, every single sick call, that we can't really predict this on average what the sick calls are. Every training's typically what we're seeing on average, we're paying, $358,000 is what it would cost us if we filled every single shift up to September. So when you talk about me asking for $230,000, and I'm telling you this was the raw data on average, we really try to keep our numbers and our overtime down. So it's one of those things for me, it's like, I don't want to come to this town and say we need $300,000 in overtime. I'm predicting we're going to be somewhere close to 230. But it's a moving target. We could have a homicide case that we had in Pinardville where 10 of our officers are going to court for weeks and weeks testifying to a homicide. Didn't put that in the budget. So if that answers your question, it's tough for us to show where we're at.
Elizabeth?
So, department by department, your department has one of the biggest increases. But when I look at your budget, it seems like they are all concentrated on getting fully staffed up and the training and the equipment that new employees require. And you're line by line, like things are going down in non-employee lines, in other words. So I guess my question is, do you think that's accurate? Like, the cost of turnover seems to be really hitting your department hard.
Yeah. So I can give you an example. This uniform I'm wearing, this year went up. Our shirts, we used to pay $199 for a shirt. They're $115 or $20 now. On average, every single new police officer that we hire is $5,000 just to outfit them. For the two shirts we give them, short sleeve, long sleeve, 3 pairs of pants that we give them that they work 12 hours a day in, their boots, their gun equipment, their outer carrier vests, their hats, their raincoats, their winter coats. You're talking just in uniform costs, we're about $5,000. So when you look at my uniform line, which we'll get to line by line, we still have 4 openings right now that if I hired 4 people today, I would have to come up with $20,000 in a uniform line. It's only $21,000. Plus I have to maintain 30 other, or where, however many we're allocated, 27 officers that are constantly, if they need a new shirt. So yeah, it is. And then your training, FTO training for how much they train.
So, but you're 1 year into a CBA, right?
Yes. Well, yeah, sorry.
Okay. I guess I'm wondering, I mean, in this larger discussion we're having about the importance of retaining employees and paying them fairly, if that CBA needs to be revisited.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you're having trouble hiring.
Well, yes, that's true. I think every single law enforcement agency in the state is having trouble hiring. I think state police sent people to California and they've recruited a couple people out there.
So are we still paying, though? We're paying what? And that compensation report, it gave, I don't remember what the number was for the police department. I have to look back in here. The average for the town was we were paying 8% below market. Police says we're paying 9% below market. Is that still true?
I would say you're talking non-union.
Non-union.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
different.
So
All right, fair
I would
enough.
say
Non-union. Okay.
non-union is we've gotten to a good place, I think. the
So
town has.
they've moved up, but what about your union
The
employees?
union got a pretty good bump, absolutely. Their contract that was passed, and I don't want to say it to the world, but because I feel like we're doing okay right now. I'm never going to say we have room for improvement, but the union has negotiated a pretty decent contract, but again, it was decent for last year. Now everybody around us is doing what we always do, as Peter discusses it, we're just fighting the next person, right? But our union folks right now, there are things built into that contract that gives them the ability to advance, to make more money upon certain testing processes. there's opportunity for growth for them when it comes to their job function. I don't want to say they make good money, because I think it's all relevant to where we're at in this world right now. Some of them don't make a livable wage, and I'm just saying that, but they come to work here.
Danielle?
Just to add to that as well, with this new union contract, we did see at least, was it 2 certified officers that we were able to draw in under the new contract?
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had a certified officer come to Goffstown for pay. We have so far, and I think, Frank, we talked about this before about advertising. 2 people that were already certified came down from up north and talked to us, and worked out that 2 of them started with us. One of them has 7 years on, and this year has the ability to advance in his grade, and if he takes the test and passes it, he'll end up making a little bit more money than he started. And he looked at that as, okay, I'm moving closer to my fiance, and in a year I can be making even more money. Which
I
think that was
noticed you
a
do have
good
money in your budget for advertising, more money in your budget for advertising this year.
minimal.
Yeah.
I put a little bit in during budget season and never really thought about putting more in there. But again, I'm coming to this committee in this town thinking to myself that I got to keep things down. And it's always a balance.
Okay.
Samantha?
Would you say that the issue that you would have with retention, I just want to make sure I'm saying this correctly, it's not so much with pay, it's one, like the general, like, societal attitude towards police officers might be like an issue with retention, and also the facility. Would those probably be like the 2 main factors with retention?
I think they all play a factor. I don't want to ever say one thing is one thing, because the exit interviews I did last year, it was all different. Some of it was pay, some of it was leadership, some of it was the building, some of it was just don't want to be here. I think what we're seeing is people aren't as committed to staying in one organization for 30 years like they used to. People want to change and go around, right? And I think that if pay always helps.
Right.
Right, so if you're being paid 10% less than every other person around you, and you're going, well, I could do the same job in a different uniform, and oh, by the way, they have Taj Mahal as a police department, sounds good to me, right? Or they say, hey, I really like working here, the people are great, culture's great, but I can't get on a SWAT team, because we don't have a SWAT team, so I'm going somewhere else. So they start to look at their path of development, and if we can't offer it, and everybody else does around us, including Ware, Dumbarton, Bedford, Boston, why do they stay? So we keep them for 4 years, we make them the best officers they can be, and we hope we give them a great foundation of law enforcement for their 25-year career, and we hope we keep them. And if they choose to move on for other reasons, that's what they do. So it could be the building, some people didn't like the building, but, some people will say, hey, I can make more money next door in Bedford, do the same job. I think what keeps us here is our schedule. People love having every other Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. That's a big factor, they get their time off.
Okay, are there other, we're moving back, hopefully moving back to the lines. No, it's okay. Just try to keep us on task.
Still got Ab to get to.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, on Object Code 44-100, professional dues, in that light item, is it tied to New Hampshire Association Chief of Police dues?
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, you guys know what's coming. I can't leave a department out, but,
You forgot about 3 for town hall, though.
I'm sorry?
You forgot about 3 for town hall.
I know. I caught it earlier.
Okay.
But I can still bring it up. Anyway.
I know $60, but.
We don't have this.
So I make a motion to reduce Object Code 44-100 professional dues by $350 tied to New Hampshire Association Chief of Police. So that would be from $3,042 down to $2,692. If my math is correct.
So 3,042 to what?
2692. You're backing out $350, my understanding, for the dues into the New Hampshire Association Chief of Police.
Brian, what's that line number again?
44,100 on page 7.
Chief, can you talk a little bit about what the...
He needs a second.
Is there a second to Brian's motion?
Second.
Second by Frank. Chief, can you talk a little bit about what the Chief of Police Association does?
Absolutely. I'd also like to mention that we also have a professional dues. There's a lobbyist that is for the New Hampshire Bar Association, that our captain, who's our prosecutor, who's an attorney, needs that for his job. It has a lobbyist too, so that's $620.
That was tied to you, okay.
Just if you wanted to add that. Sure. New Hampshire Chiefs of Police. Well, what a great organization it is that I'm a proud member of. And if you haven't met our lobbyist, Beth Sargent, who's been doing, I think she told me Friday night, 27 years. She's one of the best lobbyists I've ever met in my life, but she's also the most kindest human being ever. What she does is a very small part of what the New Hampshire Chiefs of Police Association represents. She's really there to help all the chiefs in the state who are part of this membership understand what bills are coming through the state legislature, but also she's there to help foster relationships and get the right chiefs in the right positions during legislation and also committees in the state, so that way they can help offer up better understanding to our legislators of how public safety is affected by some of their bills. So, for an example, because I'm part of the New Hampshire Chiefs Association, I sit on an oversight commission up at the State House with legislators and other individuals that's an oversight of child services. So we get to sit with a committee of legislators representing New Hampshire Chiefs of Police, but also your town, and govern or create legislation to help protect children. And while they're sitting there talking about all these different things that are happening to children, I, as the chief of police, and my partner from Dover, get to give them information about how certain things are ran with police departments, how the operation of protecting children from the day-to-day happens. If they didn't have that opportunity to sit with the New Hampshire Chiefs of Police Association, they wouldn't have those questions answered for them. And not every single state legislator has the ability or the knowledge to connect with their chief of police or has their chief of police for a phone number or talks to them because they just don't have that ability. Beth also had the ability to sit at a committee on bail reform who, when both sides of the aisle asked her, do you have anybody in mind, chiefs or somebody that can come speak on behalf of bail reform? The captain, who deals with it every single day in the prosecutor's office, went up there on behalf of the New Hampshire Chiefs of Police Association and gave input into some of the legislation that's being changed in the state and how bail reform helps and hurts us. You know, the Chiefs of Police I also sit on the State Emergency Response Commission that oversees all of the emergency response plans and hazard materials. I am there at the fire marshal's office representing what law enforcement needs or does during certain situations. If I was not a member of the New Hampshire Chiefs of Police Association, I wouldn't be able to offer that guidance. We are representing our community by doing that. Second thing they do, or third or fourth or fifth, again, not lobbyists, they also help out in the state when it comes to Toys for Tot, fundraisers. They also have wonderful and very thought-provoking trainings that I just went to that talk about use of force and liability and different challenges that they're seeing at circuit court courts around the United States when it comes to use of force. If I wasn't a member of that, I would not be sitting in those trainings. I mean, I can keep going, but Beth, our lobbyist, who's been doing this for, I think, 27 years, and represents not only all New Hampshire law enforcement chiefs, and I think she does it in a very professional way, she also knows the majority of all of our legislators, and they have such a great relationship with her, they don't have a problem talking to her and saying, hey, what do you think the chiefs would think about this? We're gonna put this bill in. How does this impact law enforcement? How does it impact public safety? So the lobbyists of part of our association is very minuscule. Second point, New Hampshire Bar Association has a lobbyist. If you cut that, Dan Conley will no longer be able to be an acting attorney, so we'll be asking the board for $120,000 to $150,000 a year for an attorney that's not a police officer, that's a civilian, and will just do our prosecution for us on the side. But then that employee will still be part of the New Hampshire Bar Association, so technically there's a lobbyist there, so they wouldn't be able to maybe represent us. I'm not really sure how we'd have to do that, but.
Okay, other discussion? Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And Chief, and I said this to others, again, I'm not saying there's not value in these organizations. I keep on going back to, if there's taxpayer monies, it's the use of funds.
Yeah.
And I really wrestle with that because, again, all these organizations do add value, but they use the public funds for this, it should be strictly public services, not so much advocacy or for lobbying.
I understand that, Brian. I would just, I wholeheartedly sat here in all these different conversations, and I've listened to you, and I understand where you're coming from. I just hope that the public hears the value of what I've just said about why we are part of this organization and how the lobbyists, however people think we're using their funds for lobbyists, I hope they see it really outweighs more than the little piece that lobbyists. And I really would hope that someday you would meet Beth and see what she really does for our town.
Yeah, I can't vote on this just because I grew up with Beth's kids, like, to the point where, like, we have a decent relationship even outside of the State House. But I will say, to speak to Chief Serino, Dan Conley, and others, they are so good about contacting their state reps about things going on in Concord, and I think the chiefs of police add a good, like, they help direct them to the correct, to the correct legislator. Sitting on judiciary, I was part of the LEAC commission and things like that, and the chiefs really helped lead the way. Dan Conley helped lead the way. We were on the phone probably weekly at that point. So I think they do add value, but I just can't vote because I'm just so close personally to that. So.
Thanks. Yeah, the way I look at this too is, I mean, I understand Brian's philosophical point, but we're talking about a few $100s that can add so much more value. You know, we keep hearing, do more with less, how do we leverage things, efficiencies. To me, the 10 things the chief just listed off really outweigh the ideological challenge that I have, but this is good for Goffstown. That's it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Brian's motion to reduce line,
Well, I want to amend it, actually.
okay, what would you like to amend it?
I want to amend my motion to reduce from $3,042 down to $2,072 to back out the New Hampshire Bar and the New Hampshire Association of Chief of Police, to be consistent.
Okay.
So just so,
Is that
right,
620?
it's $620 for the bar and $350 for the association.
So
Yeah, so, yeah, my
it's
math,
$980.
yeah, 970.
970.
Yeah, so down to $2,072.
Okay, Frank, you okay with that?
Yes.
All right, so all those in favor of Brian's motion to reduce line 1101000044,100 professional dues from $3,042 to $2,072, please raise your hand now. All those opposed to the motion? Jared Talbot, Kelly Boyer, Peter Grigorkakis, Elizabeth DeBrule, Mark Rayno, Olivia Welter-Erdahl, Samantha Kearns, Richard Manzo, Allison DeCesare, Laura Stevens, is carried, Doug Pounds, Frank Hobbs, and I'll abstain from that. So the motion fails 1 to 13 to 1. Jared.
Chief, just a question. I'm not going to make a motion, of course. But for diversion services, I know that you're slated to have $4,500. This, I know, is not just something that you do, but could you talk about what diversion services is, as well as the interactions you have with other members of the public that support the initiatives for diversion services?
What line is that?
This is line 45225 on page 7.
Thank you.
Yeah, so diversion is basically anytime we have a juvenile that we have to send to court. Typically, there's a whole list of what the, basically, if we're charging a juvenile, there's a whole list of things that they have to abide by. It has to be like the first time offense. They have to admit to their crime. Basically, gets them eligible for the first time being arrested by us. Instead of going and sitting in front of a judge and going through that whole part of the justice system, they can go to diversion. And part of that is we contract with Crispin's House, who's in our area, and basically a group of people come together, they work with this youth, they really hone in on why did they commit the crime, what's going on in life. A lot of these children are committing crimes because they really just need help. And maybe the parents don't have the ability to get them where they need to be. So diversion, instead of them going in front of a judge, helps them go in front of a different group and helps them create plans. So we see anything from community service, but also they promise the group that they're going to find a job if they're old enough, or they're going to write an apology letter. So there's all kinds of different ways of going about justice being served for a crime that was committed. And the crime obviously has to be not violent in nature. There's a whole list of them. But that's basically in a nutshell what it is.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else? Page 7, page 8 rounds out the police budget. I want to give the budget committee.
I have one for page
Samantha.
8. Line 53240, gasoline. Do you have a current year-to-date on that?
53240, gasoline. Yes, I do. As of today, as of this, $32,061 is year-to-date expended.
Wait, so is that so that's what we've spent since 10/31? So that's the same,
No, is that what it is?
yeah,
Then we haven't-
$32,062.
Then we haven't,
Hold on a second.
Oh.
So,
okay.
we have bought gasoline. The way the gasoline structure works is, all of it is purchased under DPW, and then it is reallocated out to the department. So at the end of the month, there's a report that the fleet secretary gets from the system, and she reallocates out to each department based on which cars checked in and filled and how much they filled.
Okay.
And then those go to the department heads. The department heads have to review them, sign off on them, send them back to town hall. Town hall then receives them and processes them through manual journal entries in order to get those allocations to the correct lines. So as of right now, I can tell you we are behind on processing because we are down 3 of the 5 bodies in finance.
Okay.
but to your point, Sam, we average about 1,300 gallons a month-ish, depending on how many cars are out in the street, how many, but I'll tell you, just looking at the numbers and doing the budget, that's why I think I decreased it by 10,000.
Right.
This year, when we projected 70,000 last year, we had different numbers, different gas prices. We didn't expect to have so many people leave, so there's not enough cars. So that, I brought it down 10,000. And to be quite honest with this committee right now, I don't know where we're gonna be at next year. We might have room for bringing that down a little bit more.
So I'm looking to preemptively bring it down a little bit more.
Sure, how about bring it down maybe, another 10,000 maybe?
That's what I was gonna say.
Sure.
We're on the same wavelength. So
I
I'm gonna
have
make,
a feeling gas prices are going down next year.
They are. and
I
that's
think
why
they're
brought
going
it
down this year.
But my concern only is that if we become full staff in January, more cars are gonna be on the street. We'll use more gas. But on average, right now, we're using about 1,300 gallons.
Okay.
But we did get a lower gas price for next year.
Okay, Samantha, are you doing that?
well,
Make a
looks,
motion?
I will, do you want me to make my motion first, or did you have something else you needed to
I was just gonna add to
clarify?
what the chief had said about the rate is a little bit lower for next year, but regardless of what happens at the pumps, we have a contract for our allotted gasoline usage that we've already pre-locked
Oh.
in for what our dollar
So-
rate will be.
So like if I'm paying $4 at the pump, that doesn't matter, because you've already set your gas price for the year.
Yeah.
But is that for the full year of 2025?
It's through October.
So we don't know. do
We don't know
the number?
November and December yet. We go out to bid
That's always
every
the,
year.
that's always the anomaly. And I always use, when I'm trying to figure out that late October, November, December, I always think, what if gas prices shoot up, we're paying $5 a gallon? So I try to put it at like a higher, 450. But I mean, there's,
I'm gonna make my motion to reduce line 53240 gasoline from 60,000 to 50,000.
Is there a second to that motion?
Seconded.
Second by Richard Manzo. Any discussion on this? I don't see any, so hearing none, the motion by Samantha Kern, second by Richard Manzo, is reduce line 11010000, I'm sorry, 53240 gasoline from 60,000 to 50,000. If you're in favor of that motion, raise your hand now. Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous.
Oh my
So
gosh.
15 to 0.
What a beautiful unifying motion.
Excellent. All right, other questions? Okay, Mark's gonna leave at 8:50.
I have a question.
Elizabeth?
On communications, the spots contract, first of all, I don't know what that is.
Yep.
And secondly, our actuals for the last 2 years have been really, really low, like 0 for 2024.
no. I don't think there'll be 0. So SPOTS, the State Police Online Terminal System, that is our contract that we have with State Police, where we connect to their system, which gives us access to all the databases. So if I need to know whose car is out front there, I need to know who's registered. We run that plate in our system, that connects to State Police. It tells us it's Elizabeth's car. This is the address, the registered owner, license, warrant checks. It brings us into all the databases, FBI, classified databases like that. So that's our connection, that's their fee. And I will tell you, I don't know why you're seeing 0, because typically State Police tells us it's $1,578 a year.
So in 2023, it was only $594, according to the actuals.
Yep. We have.
We can look into it and see if it
I
was
can-
miscoded,
nope, I
maybe?
can tell you exactly what it is. And Brian will, every terminal, if I'm correct, Brian, has a spots connection. So if there's 3 terminals in dispatch, those 3 are about $200-ish a year. Don't quote me exact number. And then as we go to our legal clerk, who enters warrants into the system, her terminal has one. I believe one of our records clerk, 2 records clerks have them, so when they enter different things in there. I think what we're seeing on some of that price difference is we had budgeted for 2 or 3 other terminals that are in the station that needed access to them, and we budgeted for that, and the plan was for that. I didn't necessarily talk to IT at the time, and we didn't have enough ports in our switch to run those lines back to them, so we never hooked it up. And I believe we've upgraded those switches to then run those cables back over there. But at the time, I was thinking, oh, you need one, you need one, you need one, we're gonna budget for it. I didn't talk to him when he says, what do you want me to do? There's no ports left in the switch.
Okay.
So that might be exactly why we didn't spend all the money, is because we didn't hook those terminals up. I don't know if the plan is to still put them and hook them up, or if they all are active now. ID's okay.
Okay, so we just haven't been billed for it
Yeah.
yet for this year.
And if it ends up next year that they're not, the spots prices are changing, that's not what they're telling us, but if it ends up being that we didn't hook the other ones up or something came up, then we can reduce it.
Okay.
Frank?
Chief, can you speak to line 53420, equipment maintenance on page 8?
Yes, I can.
What is that? I don't have any notes on that.
Say, do the line number again?
It is 53420.
Yep.
Equipment maintenance.
I have no idea.
I have
Cybercom.
cyber communication down.
Yeah, you ready?
That's what it is?
First year.
Okay.
Yeah. cybercom.
5-year contract.
Because I thought we had that in the dispatch.
That's the line he's looking at, page 8 is dispatch.
Hold on.
It's under communications.
Are you, oh, you're under communications, sorry,
Yep.
Frank. That's, I was looking, there's two of them. Yes. 53420, under dispatch,
Yeah.
communications.
So what was it?
Hold on. That's the line you're looking at?
Correct, yep.
Okay. That is our contract with Cybercom for our radio agreement. And what we used to have was two-way, who was about $12,000 a year. And then we had money in there for any kind of ancillary breakages or things that break for our radio consoles. When we went to this new radio program, Cybercom is our new vendor. And I think I told the committee this last time, I don't know the exact number, I have it somewhere, but our, year 24 was 42,000 and some change, year 25 was 43,000, so we need to pay that as our contracted maintenance agreement.
Okay.
So the increase is the difference from the 17.5 and then to that 42,680. Sorry, I was looking at the patrol side.
All set. Yep, Jerry.
To the town administrators, for this item, because this is a signed contract, shouldn't that already be listed in the default?
This contract hasn't gone to town meeting, so it hasn't been Sanbornized, so we cannot put it in the default budget.
But the select board has signed on to it where it's on the hook.
Has a municipal out clause if we don't get the appropriation.
Thank you.
Okay, Chief, we're looking at CIP, all you have are the 3 vehicle replacement.
Yes, because the board had cut the parking lot expansion as part of their cuts, so we don't have that in there. And yes, we have 3 cruisers.
I just gotta ask a question, because I know that years past you've had problems with the COVID cars. Are we still having those issues, or?
Let me,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, that was a term the chief,
Yeah.
and I think it's stuck.
So, we have gotten rid of, there's 3 2020s that are on the line that we're moving this year. We're not seeing huge amounts of problems with the newer cars. Yeah, the COVID cars are out, they're getting to be out.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have another question on that line, though. I'm a little confused. You always get 3 cruisers, 3 cars a year, right?
Holistically, yes, sometimes we haven't in the past and we paid for it because of that.
Okay. So I'm wondering why the default budget is 120, when the default budget was, for 2024, was 180, and the revised budget was 191.
So it has to do with the amount so approved in the prior budget.
Which was, the 2023 budget was 180.
Didn't we have,
That might be a mistake.
hold on, we'll pull
I
that up.
don't have the default detail with me.
I'll
We can look
I'll
at
into
that.
that and get back to you in a minute.
Okay.
And to your point, Elizabeth, I'm not sure what that glitch was, because I noticed that too, but last year, I think we did run somewhere around 180, 190-ish. 183 maybe, I think is what it was. We ended up, I have to look back, but I noticed that glitch in Munis too. I'm not sure why that 120 came from.
Is that when the state bid price was higher?
I
Remember
think
we
that's
had
why
over a year?
it went up. I think the board had allocated us more money to get those cruisers in. I think it was like $3,000 more. But the glitch she's talking about is something with Munis, I'm not sure.
Okay. And the increase is because you're changing types of vehicles because you were having trouble with the other vehicles?
So we're seeing an increase either with Tahoes or with the regular Ford Cruisers. Everything's gone up. But yes, the bigger increase here is 2 Chevy Tahoes are a little bit more expensive than the
forms.
Right.
Yep.
All right, we all set? Okay. Thank you, Chief. I'm gonna take another 5-minute break, come back at 9:07. Thank you very much.
Try and get through
So I've already spoken to Adam Jacobs. I want to give DPW as much time as possible, so I'm hoping to push this back to 12:17. So we'll go through the sewer department today, and then we'll call it a day. It's going to be about 3.5-hour meeting. We have these meetings scheduled, and I think that
Get everything all laid out.
Oh, so we're not gonna do that.
going till 11 o'clock on DPW, I don't think is constructive for any of us, so I'm just as chair going to push this back to 12:17. Thursday is not possible because we have school officials coming back, and we're also doing the village water precincts. So with that, Derek, do you have something to say?
So before, when Jared asked about our contract for the radios, I had thrown out a term, Sanbornize it. That's when you have a multi-year contract and you bring the cost to the voters and you say, we have a multi-year contract and this is the estimated increases. There's a case out of Sanborn. So I will share an NHMA article with you. A lot of the contracts that the town has for whether it's, multi-year for radios, there may be many services that we get. We have made the choice not to bring those contractual increases to the voters to vote on them. Therefore, they have not been Sanbornized. Therefore, they do not go in our default budget. So I did want to clarify for you, and look to your email tomorrow. I will send you an article on that, kind of explaining that.
Thank you. That's helpful. So we're on page 19 and 20. This is the sewer fund, enterprise fund. Remember, this is a revolving fund, so does not have an impact on taxation. It's totally self-funded, but I want the budget committee to be able to look at this. Our sewer officials aren't here, but I think Derek and Danielle can provide support if needed. Elizabeth.
The line, computers and communication. By the way, you guys have been missing the I in communication throughout the entire budget.
I didn't notice that.
They're numbers people, okay?
That isn't what my question though. The line here was 48450, and it went down to zero. It went from 22,850 to nothing. What's going on there?
That's one of the
They combined with administration.
Was that?
Can you give me the line number again? You're in operations?
I'm in sewer administration.
Yep.
48450.
Okay, computers and communication. So what they did is they were aligning their lines with how IT, who does the coding townwide, assigns the lines. So rather than using computers and communication as a catch-all, they break it out into computer software, internet and phone access, as well as mobile communications. So you'll see under those lines directly below it, they all had zero in the default because last year those lines weren't utilized, and instead they're broken out into more detail.
Okay.
And then I believe they also have a telecommunication lines under their sewer pump stations that did not previously live there.
Okay. Thank you.
So Derek and Danielle, line 41250 is the commissioner. That's an elected official stipend.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to zero that line out. 2750 down to zero. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Sam. Any discussion on this?
So
Samantha?
I guess I just have the sewer department is an enterprise fund. So is that stipend money raised by taxation, or is it only raised by the sewers users?
It's raised by sewer user, the fees that are charged to sewer users.
Okay,
Yeah, nothing in their lines is raised by taxation.
right. I guess I'm just I'm clarifying this because we've been cutting stipends across the board because it is raised by taxation. And I guess I'm slightly torn on this because I know the sewer department also had to raise usage fees in the last year, and they have a tiered system that they had talked about where it's it'll level out. And so part of me thinks, to be fair, this should be cut. I seconded this just so we can have this discussion, and then another part of me says that it's an enterprise fund and they're, they are managing exactly what it is supposed to be. That's my thoughts.
Elizabeth?
I would just say, I mean, this comes up with the water precincts as well. I mean, budget committees traditionally don't look very carefully at the water precincts budgets, because it's not taxation. People still have to pay it. I mean, you still get a bill for it, and
Still
you
fees.
don't really get to control it, other than having it go through the budget committee and be subjected to that same level of scrutiny. So, I mean, again, on principle, I would rather not have cut all these stipends, but if we're going to cut them, I think we need to cut them across the board to everybody.
Okay. Any more discussion on this, Peter?
Can someone tell me a little bit more about what the stipends are for when it comes to the commissioner? Like, is it just generally something that's just applied month by month? How does that work?
So the two of the commissioners have a stipend of $825, and the chairman or chairwoman has a stipend of $1,100. They're in every week to review bills and pay the bills for the sewer commission. They're also, the chair is working with the staff to set their agendas and to communicate and, review notices of decision or anything that might go out, and, watch emails and those kind of things.
Any more discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to reduce line 326-000-000-41250 from 2750 to 0, please raise your hand now. All those opposed? Kelly Boyer. Those abstentions? Jared. So the motion carries 12 to 1 to 1.
Mr.
Frank.
Chair, should we be adjusting the FICA and the Medicare with that too?
Yes.
If that was part of the motion, we will do that.
Okay. It's $9.50.
We all get it.
Do you want a motion?
Yeah, so I would like to make a motion to adjust the FICA and Medicare that corresponds with commissioner stipend. Allow Danielle the ability to reduce those lines accordingly.
I'll second it.
Second by Peter. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, it's 13 to 0 to 1. Jared Talbot abstains. I always forget. We've been forgetting that.
Almost caught it before you said it too.
Derek, Danielle.
I think Danielle had a follow-up.
I have an answer to the question about the default for the cruisers. So the cruisers in 2024 were broken out in our detail lines, and one was a different type of vehicle. I believe it had different outfitting. So it was just an error in that when the individual lines were gone through, the quantity was zeroed out at 60,000.
So it should be 180.
It should be 180.
Should
So
be
you guys will
180.
adjust the
We will
default
adjust
to
that.
reflect that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Allison.
Under sewer operations, line 45030, consulting services. Select board and department head went up to 75,000. What's the extra 30,000? Because it's generally in the 40-somethings.
So it depends on what the sewer commission has projected for projects. This year, they didn't have as large of a project lined up. They use their consulting line because they have a contract with outside firms for engineering, permitting, going through all of those pieces of the project. So they get quotes based on what they have in their CIP for that projected year.
Okay, any other questions regarding the sewer budget, sewer enterprise fund? Okay, so we're gonna wrap this meeting up. I do want to notify the committee and the public that on 12/12, we'll be discussing the 2 water precincts. And then we will be having a conversation regarding administration and other things. So Brian Balke has indicated that he will have administrators here for question and answer from the committee. Jared, do you have something to add to that?
No, just, I know that we have, it's up to the chair's discretion. I don't know if we're doing school first or the water precincts first.
I would assume the water precincts
Yeah.
to knock them out of the way, but I know that you have a personal reason that you need to be somewhere else.
Well, we can talk about under public, or I'll just talk about from the school perspective. The 4th graders are putting on a wonderful play here on Thursday at 7 p.m. And it would be a great opportunity for this board to go look at that if they wanted to take a strategic pause to actually go to that play. It's going to only be like 40 to 50 minutes, but we kind of talk about what the school system puts on. This is a great opportunity for those 4th graders to shine on our stage right down the hall. And again, it's up to the chair if we want to take a strategic pause to look at that and see the things that the school puts on for the community, but that's up to the board.
Is this the annual Christmas concert?
Um,
Or holiday concert? Sorry.
Yes, at 7 o'clock. So again, just the availability if the board wants to look at that. I'm going to be going to it because I think I should be. And that and my kids are in it too,
kids are in
but,
it.
you know,
Yeah.
that's me being a little selfish. But again, just leave it up to the board.
How long is it gonna be?
Roughly, probably about, I don't know who's gone to it before, but I'm told it's about 40 to 50 minutes.
It's really the cutest little thing you've ever seen.
I will
All right.
motion this.
All right, hold on. So let us meet at 6 o'clock on Thursday, go through the village water precincts, and then I will recess the meeting for the 45 minutes and notify the public that we will be attending that as a committee or whatever if you want to, and then have the administrators come immediately following that.
I'm sure they're watching right now and they'd appreciate it.
Does that mean that the Christmas concert will be on GTV too? This is
Well,
gonna
I
be the
hope
big
so,
break for these
because I was
kids.
supposed to be watching it on my phone, but luckily I don't have to do that. I'll be here, so.
It'll be a big deal for them.
Okay. 12:17, 12:19. So is there any other comment for this?
I have a question.
Laura, go ahead.
So, okay, so we're doing Village Water, the Christmas show, and then the school on the 12th. On the 17th, we're doing Public Works, and that's it?
Well, I assume we're gonna have a Public Works, we're gonna have a discussion on DPW, and then we may wanna have more of a discussion on,
So like, the rest, yeah.
well, some numbers, I
Yeah,
think,
okay.
Danielle and Derek are gonna get us some numbers back. We have budgeted till 12:19, for meetings, so we have a whole extra meeting if we need that. I wanna take our time on this, so I'm not necessarily, I don't think anybody's comfortable, like, finishing up on the 17th, but it's up to the committee, so. Derek?
Do you want, so department heads have been out for many meetings. Do you want all department heads here Tuesday night after DPW? Or do you foresee we're going to reach 9 o'clock and again, send department heads home? I'm skipping my son's hockey game for that Tuesday night. So I'm here anyway, and Adam's here because it's DPW, but I guess my question is, what, do you want the other department heads here? Or are we gonna reach 9 o'clock and move to continue to the 19th?
Jared?
Just as a conversational piece and from a historical standpoint, I know other members have been on the board. DPW has traditionally been one of those ones that we've talked about a lot for a meeting. I don't know if it's appropriate, maybe we would say focus on DPW only on the 17th and then do kind of a callback on the following day for the 19th. I just want to be cognizant of the effort and the time that all of our administrators have to put in. I know that they serve at our will, but I know DPW is probably going to take a little bit. It has been a longer one traditionally.
And Adam is long-winded. Allison?
With with all due respect, I don't understand why we're breaking for 45 minutes. I mean, I get Jared wants to go, but my kids are at home, and I'm not with them twice a week this week, and then we're taking 45 minutes to go to a show, which has really nothing to do with the budget committee. So I don't quite understand how or why that's happening. I mean, again, we all miss stuff because we're here. And again, I feel Derek's missing stuff. I
No.
miss stuff at home.
Yeah.
I
can
just, I don't,
respond to
I
that.
just.
I mean, me personally, I'm just saying that it's being offered to whoever wants to go, and
I
if
get
we don't
it.
want to, we don't have to.
Well, I know, but Joe just said we were all breaking for 45 minutes to go to the show. That means we're not continuing our work. So even if we didn't want to go to the show, we're just sitting here waiting to continue the work that we all signed up for.
I just
Peter.
want to, oh my goodness, where did that voice come from? Is this also, I don't want to say we're doing this for the administrators, but does this also allow, we're having the administrators here that night, does it allow them to be present at that?
Well,
Is
yeah.
that part of?
No,
We're not doing it for you, but.
No, we're talking about two different things, because I thought we were talking about town when we talk about administrators. The school individuals will be here when we ask them to be here, whether it's at 6 o'clock, whether it's at 7 o'clock, whether it's at 8 o'clock. Brian Belkey and the team will be here when we ask them to be.
Okay, so it's not because we all want that representation?
Well, some of them might be there, but we will
But
be
it's
here.
not for that reason. I gotta agree, honestly.
Okay,
As
so
much
is
as I
everybody
wish-
okay with-
I would love to go, but.
I would not, I've been 1,000 times. for
Okay,
my
so,
children.
so,
You're supposed to say you'd love to go.
I'd love to go.
When her
I-
kids were there,
I
she did
support
love
all
to
the
go.
things my kids are in, et cetera, and more.
okay, so I've heard the committee, so we'll just continue on with our work, and maybe Jared will have somebody else from the school board available to help us with our work. So administrators, if you're listening, we're just gonna get started at 6. Anything else? I have to do, oh, Derek.
Can you just clarify what numbers Danielle and I are working on? This is the big ticket, is that?
So, yeah, so I wanted to know what the big groups of money are in that difference between proposed and default.
And that's what the committee is looking for?
I'd also like to see what a pause and the step increase is, if maybe there's a half-year increase, or if there's an increase that starts in, what, July?
Right now, it's planned for 6 months, but I think I understand that part. I just wanted to just,
So I want to be able to look at that $2.9 million and say, okay, the change to the compensation plan and all the associated benefits is going to cost, whatever, $300,000, whatever that's going to cost. And the increase to the health insurance is going to be $233,000. And the culvert project is going to be $423 or whatever it is. I want to be able to start looking at those things and thinking about what are the things we are going to absolutely have to do. Like, we have to do the health insurance increase. There's no way around it. So I want to start seeing what those big buckets are as we try and move forward on this.
Does that make sense?
yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted to make sure we understood what the committee was looking for.
And I suggest, I mean, we still have a question on the floor about what we're doing on the 17th, if we're just doing DPW, if we're not. Here's my suggestion. Have DPW come and present so that they have as much time as they need, and then afterwards, I think the committee should start discussing these things. We're not gonna make decisions that night, but we need to start discussing it, and then we need to have time for the select board and the other department heads to maybe respond, and, I mean, that's how a conversation works, right? They have to partake in it. So maybe that, they can think about as we decide where we're going as a committee, they can think about it, and then we come back on the 19th, and maybe we have it out then and figure out where we're going, finally, and make decisions.
So just having Public Works or DPW on the 17th, right?
Yeah.
Not having that.
And that's what so that's the only department head that needs to come on the 17th, poor Derek and Danielle. But, and then that way, on the 19th, everybody can come, if they want to come. And maybe that, because personally, these are going to be big decisions. I don't want to make them on the fly. I want to have some time to think about it and mull it over, and I think we all need some time to discuss it.
Frank?
I agree with Elizabeth, and, I mean, there are certain hard expenses and their discretionary expenses. I think that's what I took away, they were asking, is a different perspective to look at what do we have the option to reduce? Because I think everybody anticipates we're gonna have some hard decisions that are gonna need to be made in order to not go into a default budget scenario again. So, yes.
Danielle?
Just to confirm, the flooring quotes were put on hold,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Jared?
Mr. Chair, I would like to, I know with the school board, we gave everybody the electronic version of a spreadsheet. We don't have, or I haven't received anything like that for the town side. Could we get a electronic version of the Excel spreadsheet workbook that we had so that we can just look at it electronically?
Is that-
Of this detail one?
Yeah, without changes, like what you've provided to us already. I know that we've made changes with motions, but I'd just like to have an electronic version. That way I can do my voodoo on it with Excel.
If that's what the
Is it in
committee-
Excel
if that's what the
format?
committee wants, yeah, we can do that.
Okay, that'd be great.
I mean, I don't know if it's just me. I don't know how everybody else feels about that.
Okay.
And maybe
It
best
helps.
practices that we could get it at the beginning going forward every year.
Yes.
Yeah, this just, it just, like you said, it'll be as it is printed, it
Yep.
won't have the motions.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, is there any, Brian?
Yeah, I just want to make one comment. As you guys know, I was slated to actually observe the dean of students across 3 schools. And that was confirmed with the administration, Brian Balke. And then, since we had a discussion about if anyone else had interest in observing, and because of that, Brian Balke and administration canceled the meeting today because they thought it wasn't in scope and they couldn't accommodate, in my opinion, they couldn't accommodate two or three people versus just myself. And so I'm strongly disappointed that I can't observe a dean of students across schools in their role. He did offer to bring the dean of students to our Thursday meeting, but to me, that's not the point. I want to actually see these people in action in regards to the business culture, their interaction with students. And so I just want to mention that it unfortunately didn't happen today, so I'm highly and strongly disappointed.
Okay, is there anyone here today for public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Elizabeth, second by Olivia. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We're adjourned at 9:31.